across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening. This is Peter Cardwell here with Talk. Thank you so much for your company. There's a lot to talk about today, including Trump telling Britain, get your own oil, and also the BBC knowing about Scott Mill's allegations nearly a year ago. This is the breaking line that's come out. Really, really shocking. Looks like another BBC cover-up. And Starmer has had a Cobra meeting this afternoon about Iran. We'll talk about that as well. We'll also talk about new bin rules in England, but all councils are not ready. What about your bins? Because I don't know about you, I paid my council tax yesterday and it was a hefty sum. We'll also be talking about the Shetland Islands and the fact that they had 38,000 bananas that were delivered there. Why? We're going to find out later on. Also, on a more serious note, we'll speak to a grooming and sexual abuse survivor about the grooming gangs, rape gangs inquiry, what it is and what it's meant to be too. So much to discuss, so many ways to discuss it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp text message on the main number. You can send me a WhatsApp voice message, less than a minute please, also on the main number, or you can give me a ring on the main number, which is of course 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss, and the name of the show is to be revealed in about 15 minutes time, so stay with us here on Talk. Well, very interesting to hear what Donald Trump has been saying. Go get your own oil, he has said. A fascinating Trump's Truth Social post. He said all those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you, the president wrote on Truth Social. Number one, buy from the US. We have plenty. And number two, build up some delayed courage. Go to the Strait and just take it, he put in capital letters. He added, you have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't there for us. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done. Go get your own oil. Well, we know that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, has been giving a press conference as well this afternoon. We'll reflect on that. Also, we know that Nigel Farage has been supporting Trump. He says that we should do what Trump says. This is what the leader of Reform UK said earlier on today.
Look, I think that the position I made absolutely clear from the very first moment of this was we should not have blocked the Americans from using Diego Garcia and or RAF Fairford in Gloucestershire. And I think that was a big, big mistake. And I think we should have supported the Americans, and I haven't wavered in my view on that for one single moment.
So that was Nigel Farage saying that we should support what Trump is doing. Steve Gill is a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations and is with me now. Steve, the relationship between the US and the UK, your country and my country, seems to get worse and worse as time goes on. What's your assessment of it today, Steve? Thanks for joining us on the programme.
Thank you, my friend. Our relationship is great. It's just the rest of England and the U.S. that is having problems, and mainly the governments are the ones having the biggest issues. I would say that today the relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. is probably better than with Spain, with Italy, and some of the others that are continuing to block U.S. access to our own military bases that are there to ostensibly help defend Europe. And the lack of alliance from our so-called allies is, I think, really disturbing to President Trump. Peter, there's been a lot of talk that President Trump seems dead set on disbanding NATO. At this point, I would say it is the European members of NATO that seem intent on disbanding NATO, or at least getting rid of the U.S. taxpayers who fund about.
I think that's a very interesting point. I'm not sure I totally agree with it, Steve, but there are a lot of people who forget that NATO is essentially America with a few much more reduced funders of militaries attached to it. But President Trump doesn't seem to like supranational bodies. He doesn't seem to like NATO or the United Nations, for example. So isn't this a two-way street?
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that the multinational bodies seem to accomplish so little. I think President Trump maybe on one hand gets too much credit, maybe too little credit for his stopping of conflicts around the world. But man, the United Nations never seems to be able to accomplish any of that. So for all the time, all the talk, all the meetings, all the third world countries that seem to head up key committees of the United Nations, they are literally toothless when it comes to actually accomplishing anything. And I think what we're seeing with respect to NATO in this particular circumstance, the U.S. had to drag countries kicking and screaming to pay their 2.5% obligation, many of which still haven't paid, and then Trump dragged them into 5% territory, many of which still are not paying that. So I think between the funding, between the fecklessness of many of the members when it comes to stepping up to really defend themselves with what's going on in the Middle East, I think President Trump has been looking at NATO as something on thin ice, and it appears that it may be falling through the cracks at this point completely with respect to Trump's view.
Is it reasonable for President Trump to send a message like this, to say, buy from the US, we have plenty, build up some delayed courage, go to the straight and just take it? I mean, that is against basically every possible idea of how things happen. I mean, if you go to the Straits of Hormuz, and if the UK were to follow his advice, go to the Straits of Hormuz and just start taking random tankers and stealing oil, I mean, it would be chaos, would it not?
Well, you'd have to have letters of marque and at least pirate flags. I think again, this burst of rhetoric from President Trump reflects a frustration, not an actual calls for piracy. But again, I think it reflects how bitterly he is disappointed in our so-called allies refusing to step up when, as we see missiles being launched 4,000 kilometers, it is Europe that has been at risk and is refusing to cooperate in ending this threat of both nuclear weapons and these long-range ballistic missiles. And I think, again, President Trump's rhetoric is reflective of a deep frustration and a seething anger over time of how the U.S. has been played for a while in his view. There
are many reports that he wants to end the war, that he wants to wrap it up and move on. What do you make of that, especially when the Israelis' ideas are their three stated aims, their main partner in this war? You've talked about the Europeans that haven't been partners. Israel, of course, has, and their three stated aims were stop the nuclear program, stop ballistic missiles, and regime change. It doesn't look as if any of those three things are actually going to happen.
Well, I think President Trump's three were, stop the nuclear threat, stop the ballistic missiles, and end the funding of terrorism. I think Israel's focus has been regime change more than the Trump administration.
Yeah, he has talked about it previously, but he's talking about it a lot less now. And I'll be honest, the basis of my support for this military action has been, well, certainly no one wants a nuclear Iran. Nobody wants Iran with ballistic missiles. But regime change is a key aspect for me. Do you think it will be achieved?
I think it will. I think the challenge has been, and I think it was always going to be a byproduct. You can't eradicate the leadership, the IRGC, the other groups, the thug groups on the ground that keep the people oppressed. You can't do the first three and not have a resultant regime change. As you and I have talked before, Peter, our problem is that the U.S. so often replaces bad guys with worse guys in regime change. I don't think it's possible to be worse than what we've seen in Iran, but I do think there's a challenge of who comes next, and do the Iranian people actually have any free will? The problem is, protest signs and chants and large gatherings are great, but if one side has weapons and the people in the streets are unarmed, it's hard to accomplish a real regime change in a country, as large as Iran, and with the depth of kind of the thuggery on the ground that's been in place for 47 years.
Yeah, certainly. It's very interesting what Hegseth has been saying as well, the US Secretary of War, saying countries around the world should be prepared to join the mission to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. It's not just the US Navy. Last time I checked, there were meant to be big bad Royal Navy, to help us as well. I mean, that just hasn't materialised to the degree that he wants it to happen. We have in this country the Prime Minister calling an emergency meeting, a Cobra meeting today over the crisis, talking about all the different international but also economic aspects of this. I wonder, from your perspective and from the Americans' perspective, how much of an economic problem this is and how much support there is.
Well, first of all, I think we are seeing some good news today, as it does look like there is more oil flow going through the Straits of Hormuz. Some of that may be some Iranians backing off. The problem is there's no real command and control in Iran right now. Who's in charge? Can they really control every rogue, military guy out there who has, a couple of missiles at his disposal? I do think that a lot of the oil pricing has been a result of the traders, the manipulators, because there's not really been at this point a lack of oil available for the world. It's been the threat, the instability, the possibility, and you have those that like to move the market to make profits, that have played on that fear, played on that instability to kind of drive the prices. We'll see if a greater flow through the Straits of Hormuz, change that. As President Trump has said, we don't get much of our oil from there. We've got plenty of oil and natural gas to sell. But I think for most of the world, China, India, much of Europe, what flows through the Straits of Hormuz does matter, because ultimately oil is a commodity. The U.S. may have plenty of it, but the price is set by a global commodity, not necessarily by what you've got in your backyard.
Steve, thank you. That's Steve Gill there, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Appreciate you joining us on the programme this evening. Anna has been in touch with a voice note already. Remember, you can send these through on 0344 499 1000. Just WhatsApp them through. We'll play them out. This is what Anna thinks.
Good evening, Peter. President Trump and the USA bankroll NATO. Without them, we are toothless tigers. I'll be honest with you, Peter. I think this country is up the creek. We have no fuel. We have no reserves. We're a 24-hour economy. If I were Charles, get down on your knees, Charles, and pucker up. You kiss that orange backside to bail us out of the mess we're in.
Thank you very much for that. Matt in Cheshire has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Matt, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. When Trump talks like this, he's not talking about the British people or the country itself. He's talking about the political class, and mostly the Labour Party. He's actually doing us a favour by belittling and just saying all the things that the British public would like to say to Keir Starmer themselves, and we're not able to do so. So anybody that takes him literally, who thinks he hates Britain and he's deriding the country, it's just total rubbish.
Well, it goes back to what Nigel Farage said about Starmer, didn't it? Nigel Farage said about Trump, in that he said you've got to take him seriously but not literally.
Exactly. If Nigel Farage was Prime Minister now, Trump's language about Britain would be completely different. Not just because he's friends with Nigel Farage, but because he would understand that he would have an actual ally who would sort of help him out on certain things. What we've got with Labour is just a group of people that have slagged him off for the last decade, and then are now grovelling to him when it suits them and being derisory about him 5 minutes later.
So what should Starmer do now, Matt?
Resign.
Okay. Well, if he's let's assume for a second that he's not going to resign. What should he do in regard to Trump?
I mean, what can he do? He's sort of stuck in the middle of the road, like he is politically in Britain anyway, isn't he? He can't be nasty. He can't grovel too much, because then the left will hate him. He's basically in exactly the same position as he is going into the... He can't appease the left too much, because then he'll lose the centrists. I think resign is probably the best option.
I'm not sure he's going to do that. I'm not sure he's going to take your advice, Matt. But listen, if I was in politics, I would certainly have you as an advisor, because you speak a lot of common sense, Matt, and appreciate the call. Matt, one of our regular callers who always has a good and worthwhile thing to listen to. Thank you. I just want to say to all the viewers and listeners who sent in ideas as to what the show should be called. I didn't want it just to be called, The Evenings with Peter or whatever. So we've had a few ideas, we've thought about them, and actually I was speaking to the creative people earlier on, and we actually even did a few voiceovers for all of the some of the best ideas. One which was a little bit funny, which was sent in by a listener called Sam from Bexley. Let's start with the first one.
Cardi PM.
So Cardi PM was a good one. There is a programme, of course, on Radio 4 called PM, but we rejected that idea, but that was a very good idea. There was another one.
Peter Cardwell's political compass.
We decided against that too, because it's not just a political show, of course. We've got an item on bananas a bit later on. So there's lots of different ways, lots of different things we cover on this programme, not just politics, but that was a very good idea as well. And I remember the message in from Sam who said, if the morning show used to be called Morning Glory, could this show be called?
Cardi P's Happy Ending.
The answer is no, but we thought it'd be quite funny to do that. But the actual name of the show is going to be...
Cutting Through the Diatribe, Peter Cardwell's Evening Exchange on Talk.
Peter Cardwell's Evening Exchange. I hope you appreciate that. I'm afraid I've forgotten the name of the viewer and listener. Obviously, success has many fathers, so I imagine there'll be a number of people texting in now, but thank you to everybody who came up with those suggestions. So it's going to be called the Evening Exchange. You're very welcome to the Evening Exchange. We're 17 minutes in, and we've got so much more to talk about between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to go to the debate desk in just a second with Claire Muldoon and Sebastian Salek. So stay with us for that. There's lots to talk about. This Cobra meeting, a development on Scott Mills as well. The BBC knew about the allegations almost a year ago, and John in Lincolnshire has been in touch about that. Says the situation is disturbing. Are we firing people just on rumours now, or do the BBC know more that's not in the public domain? Either way, it proves the BBC have a terrible HR team and even worse public relations department. How's your cat doing? We need kitty photos instead of more global gloom, says John in Lincolnshire. Well, John, I tell you what, if Jack is around this evening when I go home, as he usually is, I will put something out on Twitter, and we will actually, on the substantive thing that you're talking about in Scott Mills, we're going to talk to Harvey Proctor a little bit later on. We don't know what Scott Mills did or didn't do, of course, but we do know that he hasn't been charged with anything. So many different questions about that. What did the BBC know when? Did they put him on the Radio 2 programme, on the biggest breakfast programme in the country, knowing that he had been accused of these things? Or did they know that he hadn't been charged and then put him on anyway? Did he not tell them? There are lots and lots of different aspects to get into, not just with him, but also with Luke Gittos, who's a very, very good lawyer, who's going to talk about all of this. Also, another thing we're going to be talking about is Carl Turner. So thank you to Wendy. Says, are you going to be talking about Carl Turner? Wendy, we are, yes. I didn't announce it at the top, but we will. One of the only Labour MPs worth a damn. Well, very, very interesting. He's not doing interviews at the moment, but certainly we spoke to Graham Stringer, another Labour MP who may say a few things from time to time that Keir Starmer isn't happy with. We'll actually talk about that after the break with the debate desk. As I say, Sebastian Salek and Claire Muldoon, who are becoming our usual Tuesday evening debate desk regulars, will be with us in just a second. I want your views on all of this as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including the person who says Trump is a disgrace, slagging off the UK. Starmer should hold his line against this ridiculous war. Well, we will talk a little bit about that, but I want to talk about the BBC now and Scott Mills and kind of who knew what when, actually. Jeremy Vine is another presenter. I know Jeremy, and he is another presenter on Radio 2. He's also a presenter on Channel 5, but the point is that he does his programme a bit later in the day than Scott Mills' breakfast programme was. This was his reaction to Scott Mills being sacked.
You know, for me, Scott had become a friend in this place, in this very studio, in the studio across the way there, over this last year and a half, and had been in often and sat and chatted with him often. So my thoughts, my heart, my grief, my pain is for him, and also for any victim of any crime and their family and everybody involved in this. I found
we don't. And when you say crime, the whole point is there wasn't a crime, and that's where this gets difficult.
Yes.
Because the Met have been over it, and there's no crime. The CPS looked at it, so therefore we are dealing with something you would call misbehaviour.
Yes, so,
you can get fired for misbehaviour.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm afraid that's Jeremy Vine in conversation with, I think, another Radio 2 DJ, but I'm afraid I don't know who the other DJ is. Do you know, Claire?
Might be Gary Davis, perhaps.
Gary Davis, maybe okay, we don't know. We'll find out. Apologies, I should have known about that before we played the clip, but I just didn't have the information. So apologies for that. Now the Telegraph reporting that the BBC knew about Scott Mills' allegations almost a year ago. The broadcaster apologises for not investigating a claim about messages months before it fired the Radio 2 DJ. This is the BBC Radio 2's presenter terminated. The contract was terminated on Monday following allegations about his personal conduct. Now the Telegraph is saying that a former BBC presenter contacted the corporation in May last year to say she had received information about alleged inappropriate communications involving Scott Mills and asked whether the broadcaster was ever aware of or involved in any related matters. Her name is Anna Breeze. She's a freelance journalist. She also asked the BBC whether it had ever received any formal or informal complaints about Scott Mills relating to safeguarding, inappropriate conduct or harassment, and whether it had ever conducted an internal investigation into him. She did not receive a response. Interestingly, today, the BBC admitted her information should have been followed up and we should have asked further questions. We apologise for this and we'll look into it as to why it didn't happen. The shift appears to be now moving away from Scott Mills himself, he hasn't said anything, by the way, probably on the advice of lawyers, I would imagine, to the BBC and who knew what when. Well, on the debate desk this evening, Sebastian Salak, Labour councillor and commentator. Sebastian, great to see you. How are you doing?
See you, yeah, very well.
And Claire Muldoon, the broadcaster. Lovely to have you on the debate desk. Claire, what's your view on this?
I'm very troubled by it, to be honest with you. We've got the external DJ leaving, Tim Davies, and the new one coming in. I wonder if he's got any buyer's remorse from taking on such a ship, you know, that seems not to know what its comms are or indeed what the legality is of the people who are actually working for it. And it's a huge operation. It's a very valuable operation, but it begs so many questions. What happened? Who knew what? When did they know it? And if they did know before, I mean the BBC, if they did know, why didn't they act on it? I obviously don't know. I don't know any of the parties involved. What I would say is, though, that on the back of the Hugh Edwards drama documentary with Martin Clunes, I wonder if that kind of triggered the victim who allegedly has come forward now with more information.
We should say alleged victim as well. But it is a fascinating one, as you say, Claire, because it is the biggest breakfast programme in the country.
In the country.
And the question that Kevin O'Sullivan was asking as well is, did they know when the allegation was made in 2016 relating to events, alleged events, I should say, almost 20 years previously? Well, did they know when they appointed him?
The only person that we know knew about it is Scott Mills himself, because obviously he was part of the investigation, and the police have said the threshold was not met by the CPS to take anything criminal forward. Now, so as far as I'm concerned, Scott Mills is the only one that knows what's gone on, who knew what when. Now, if he had something written into his contract, say, is there anything in your past that could bring the BBC into disrepute? And he hasn't said anything, because he obviously thought that allegation was spent, for want of a better word, because it wasn't taken further. Was he in the right to not say anything? Or should he have said something? Maybe he did. I don't know.
So, Sebastian, the interesting point, well, there's so many interesting points about this as well, but Scott Mills, in theory, has done absolutely nothing wrong. He's certainly not been convicted of anything. In theory, he went through this investigation. They may have just said, look, there's nothing to see here. And now it appears that he lost his job because that has now come to light in some way. Now, just because complaints are made against someone doesn't mean they've actually done something. It doesn't mean that there is a reason to get rid of them. But yet again, the BBC is in a situation where it hasn't told the full truth. They've been asked on a previous occasion by a journalist a number of months ago, and here we are, new Director General coming in, and an absolute mess. Meanwhile, Scott Mills, who doesn't appear to have been convicted of anything, doesn't appear to have done anything, and there's no suggestion he has, is being talked about in the same breath as Hugh Edwards, Jimmy Savile, Stuart Hall, Rolf Harris, people who did horrendous things. What's your thought?
I've seen a lot of people say, what happened to innocent before proven guilty. That is a legal doctrine. That is how we apply things in the judiciary in this country. Socially and in a workplace environment, we make our own rules. And as Claire says, he signed a contract. We don't know what's in that contract. There could be something that he's done that has breached what might get you over the line and be a sackable offence. We are dealing with this story at the moment that is so new, it is so scant on evidence, on detail, on information, that it's hard to comment on that. A clumsy comparison maybe, but I think of the Prince Andrew affair. You've got the monarchy and you've got the BBC. These are two institutions that I personally value very much. I think they represent Britain in their own ways, and I want to see them survive, but they're both not exactly covering themselves in glory. So what I want to see from both is transparency. You have to face up to former wrongdoing, and you have to show that you are willing to move on. What we're seeing here, really, if these allegations are true, is scandal after scandal after scandal, and really unpleasant things as well.
Answer me this, the two of you. If there was no criminal conviction there, could the alleged victim go down the civil route?
Yeah.
So therefore, then we must be mindful that that might be the case now too. That might be what's happening.
There's also the case with something like, I mean, when I'm not comparing myself to Scott Mills or any other presenter of the BBC or any other presenter anywhere, but what I do know is that in presenter contracts, for example, I'll be careful what I say here, but in presenter contracts, as is the case with many public rules, if you bring the company you work for into disrepute in any way, they reserve the right to get rid of you.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're accused of something, it may be nothing to do with you, it may be totally false, you're nonetheless bringing your, it could be argued, bringing your organisation into disrepute. So maybe that's what's happened here. Maybe they're totally within the rights to get rid of him, but they're not telling us. He's not saying anything either.
And it's a publicly funded body, and he wasn't in a poultry.
He was the 11th highest paid presenter, 350 grand,
You know, plus the spin-offs, like the Eurovision, etc., and everything else.
But it's all happened incredibly quickly, hasn't it? He didn't know he was going when he presented his last show. He's gone. There was no instant replacement. This is a flagship programme. In the same week that Tim Davie, the Director General, is out the door. And I wonder, this is pure speculation, but I wonder if it's a parting shot from him, it's a cleaning up the house. But in any case, it's a decision that's been made very quickly, so I'm not surprised that the details aren't at this stage forthcoming.
Peter's been in touch and says, will Jeremy Vine apologise openly if Mills is found to be deeper in this fiasco? I think he won't. Well, I think Jeremy Vine was kind of actually defending him there to some degree. Also on Starmer, Jules in Bristol says, Starmer can't resign. I don't want another one of those charlatans getting a Prime Minister's wage along with a lifetime of privileges they receive at taxpayers' expense. Better to call an election, says Jules. And on the name of the programme, Graham has been in touch, Peter Cardwell's Evening Exchange. He says, who or what do we exchange you for in the evening? Can it be a can of Diet Coke or a Pizza Express pizza? Well, from Friday, Graham, it can, because I'm off Diet Coke for Lent, it must be said. We will talk...
Well, that's technically Sunday then, love. Not
no,
Friday.
No, I will die on a small day.
You fall on that sword, boy.
Lent ends on Thursday, on Monday, Thursday.
No, it does not. It does not.
Like, I know you're chief Catholic, but like, it doesn't end on Sunday.
It does.
Well, in that case, it would be 45, 46. It would be 47 days.
That's why we have Sundays off, Peter.
You don't have Sundays off. That's also nonsense.
I do. It's
That's
not
also nonsense. Have you ever gone off anything for Lent?
No, and I'm going to reach for my Bible and fact check all of this, because I need to know the truth.
Yes, there are many Bibles in this studio.
The truth's not in the Bible.
I know, I was being deceived.
Well, just in general, Claire.
Yeah. It's like a BBC contract.
Wow. Okay, so much more to talk about. We've got Iran, we've got migration, we've got more on Scott Mills if you want to talk about it. New bin rules in England as well, but not all councils are ready. Sebastian, you know all about bins.
I'm a binfluencer. I live for the bins.
We will go to the binfluencer.
Well, I could say something else there, boy.
Which one would you sort Sebastian into? Which one of the seven bins? Do let us know. 0344 499 1000. We'll get to bins. We'll go to bins after the break. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Graham says the BBC didn't get rid of Gary Lineker for multiple breaches of bringing the BBC into disrepute rather than allowing him to leave on his own terms. Why didn't they do that? That's a very, very good point, Graham. Maybe he was too big to fail. He was certainly their biggest paid presenter. Scott Mills, 11th biggest paid presenter until his contract was revoked. Pete says, are you off Diet Coke? Are you back in the full-fat version then? Pete, a hill on which I will die is that it's not, another one, is not full-fat Coke, it's full-sugar Coke. There is no fat in Coke. There is just sugar.
Which turns to fat.
Yeah, but there's no fat in Coke. Claire, you don't care. Claire doesn't care. Do you know what I care about? No, we can both care about bins.
Recycling.
Sebastian is Labour councillor. He's not standing for election. We're not going to talk about his individual council, but we are going to talk about bins. He is a binfluencer. Tell us about this.
Oh, the amount of emails I have about bins, and I love every single one of them. So now...
so much so that you're giving up the role.
Yeah, I know.
So what do you do with your junk emails then?
My junk emails?
Yeah.
I don't get many.
You bin them?
No.
Which bin do you put them in? Recycle them?
I read every one. So these are the new rules around bins. They've been in the offing for a little while, so some councils have got ahead of it and brought this in a long time ago, and some of them are unbelievably going to miss the deadline, which I don't quite understand. But the idea now is that you're separating your waste, and you've got your lovely food bin, you've got your lovely brown bin, you've got your lovely black
Sebastian.
bin. Oh, bin day, best day of the week.
No, it's
like a domestic enema. Doesn't it feel fantastic when everything is extinguished from your house?
Wow.
It's gorgeous. It's a great feeling. Friday
but
for me.
Are they all on the same day? Are all the bins on the same day?
All on the same day, but they alternate. So 1 week is recycling.
Yeah.
Oh no, every week it's recycling.
Yeah.
1 week it's black, which is everything else.
Okay.
The next week it's brown, which is garden waste.
Yeah.
And you have to remember
how many bins do you have where you live?
I have 4. So I have a black bin,
waste
normal,
of plastic. They're all made of plastic as well.
Oh, sorry, hold on. A black bin?
Black bin.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, for landfill. Yeah.
Recycling.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah.
And garden.
Okay.
Which is the big brown one.
That's garden.
Yeah.
That is the most underused one. But it's important because 25% of food of household waste is food waste. And if you put it in with everything else, it just goes and gives off horrible gases.
So I only have 2 bins. I have recycling, and sometimes I put stuff in the recycling. I'm a bit like, should I put that in? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Although they do have instructions on the front, but there's some bits that are sort of a bit of a grey area. And there's a landfill one as well. Although my building has a garden and there's a compost heap, and if I was doing some weeding the other day, believe it or not. And I was doing some weeding, half an hour of weeding, and I put it all in the compost heap. Tell us about your bins, Claire Muldoon.
I can't actually, because if I do, everything just goes into a black bin bag where we are.
Everything?
We just put it right into a big...
Right? You do not recycle anything?
No.
I promise you it gets recycled. I promise you, it would be scandalous.
What, do they sort it, or what happens?
They will sort it.
What, the private companies?
So hang on, where do you live? What kind of arrangement do you have without giving away too much on air?
She's maybe not going to reveal exactly where she lives, but
no, I don't want a postcode. I just
You've
want to know...
been there.
I have been there. I had some delicious chicken there.
Yes.
It was very nice.
And what bin did you put it in?
Well, you see, there was nothing left.
That's right.
You ate the bones.
That's right.
Yeah.
Delicious Sunday dinner, let me tell you. It was very, very good. Well, I think we've talked about bins. So what's the issue here with bins?
I didn't realise, but a lot of these local authorities are getting quite a lot of money in grants to implement this.
Because it's important.
Well, yeah, but some of the local authorities aren't on the list. If you go onto the website, some of them haven't even done anything to get everything in place.
Yeah.
And there's a cut-off date, the 31st of March.
Yes.
So it's today.
So they've had the time and they've had the money. I don't know what they're saying about why they can't do it. It seems like they should have had...
And is the irony not lost, Sebastian, that once these bins are emptied, and it could be from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m, they're just strewn across the streets, making it difficult for buggies to pass, cars to go into their drives, cars to park on the side. Disabled people don't start as on Motability scooters at 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And then the one that fell in the pothole.
Oh, yes, that was terrible.
Couldn't stop laughing at that. Anyway, but so it just seems to make an absolute... nonsense out of it, plus the inclement weather we have in this country, that any gales will just blow everything away.
Do you honestly believe, you probably know this as a Labour councillor, do you honestly believe that all the stuff you put into those bins is it's not just thrown in landfill? Because there have been investigations to some councils, I'm sure not yours, but some councils that they just throw it in landfill.
I mean, that is a scandal if that's happening, but most of them, they go to a sorting site, they have machines, optical lasers that can spot different types of plastic, magnets that pull out all of the tin and all the rest of it.
So why do we have to do it then if they've got sophisticated operations to do it?
Well, you don't necessarily. Those that have the operations, you put all of your recycling in one bin, and then the machines go, oh, that's paper, that's glass, that's
that'd be much better. I wouldn't mind doing that.
That's it. You should move to I can't say the name of my borough, can I?
No, you can't.
Move to a different borough. Move to my borough.
No.
So we've got some very, very interesting bin-related messages. Ruth in Derbyshire says we have a black bin, a blue bin, a brown bin, and then a new food waste bin. It's the smallest bin, the whole lot, and it's about 30 centimetres high. The food waste is the smallest bin, so that's interesting if it's 25%. And there's only some food waste that can be recycled as well. Dawn in Chelmsford says, like a lot of councils, we have to pay an additional charge for our brown bins, but I must add that our bin crews are terrific. There's a big debate about when Lent ends, echoing the 40 days that Jesus spent fasting in the desert. Someone has sent us in something about it. I can't read it just at the moment, but I promise I'll do it after the break. On coke as well, Alex.
Well, that would be interesting.
I'm not on coke. Do you know what? I'm going to tell a story.
An admission there from Mr. Cardwell.
I cannot reveal which media personality this is on air because it would get me in a lot of trouble. But I once had a nosebleed on air. And I was chatting to this person afterwards, and this person said, did you have a nosebleed on air? I said, yeah, I had a nosebleed on air. The people behind the scenes were very, very helpful and helped me with tissues and all the rest of it. And he said, oh, was that all the coke that you were taking? I said, well, ironically, I've actually never taken cocaine. I've never taken coke. And this person just looked wistfully into the distance and just said, ironically, I've never had a nosebleed. Stay with us here on Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So apparently the most important issue is when does Lent end. Essentially, it's a big liturgical, religious debate, but it's basically when can I have a Diet Coke? And I was banking on Friday, and Claire Muldoon tells me it's Sunday. So someone has messaged in with some information. I can't read it at the moment, it's tantalisingly close, another religious reference for you. But as soon as I know when Lent ends and who's right and who's wrong, it's basically
me.
Yeah. All right. Also on Coca-Cola, apparently it was made by a pharmacist and used to treat ailments. Don't worry, Peter, it's medicine, says Alex in Cardiff. The original Coke did have cocaine in it as well. On bins, John in Lincolnshire says, in my small town, many homes are hundreds of years old and have no storage for all these bins and have bags instead. How is this going to work? It's getting ridiculous. Well, Sebastian Salek, who's with me along with Claire Muldoon, how do you deal with that? I mean, in the area where you're a councillor, you must have a lot of flats and things as well. Where do people keep their bins?
Yeah, great question. There are some people who can't have their own bin, their own plastic bin, so they put the bags out the front. But do you know what? I don't know how it works for food bins and all the rest of it. Some of them have a big shared store. Yeah. So there'll be a food store for the whole block. But if you're living on a street and you can't have a bin, do you know what? I don't know.
Well, perhaps find out and let us know the next time. I want to talk about the arguably slightly more important aspect of the Iran war. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, was talking about the troops and the plans and the plans on the ground for Iran. This is what he said earlier today.
We're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we could come at them with boots on the ground. And guess what? There are. So if we needed to, we could execute those options on behalf of the President of the United States and this department. Or maybe we don't have to use them at all. Maybe negotiations work, or maybe there's a different approach. But the point is to be unpredictable in that. Certainly not let anybody know what you're willing to do or not do.
The Secretary of War also spoke about what allies should do. Big debate about what the UK should do. Starmer certainly seems to be an unpopular Prime Minister, but popular in his approach to Iran. That approach anyway, maybe not him personally, has certainly been something that a number of people think is a good thing. This is what Pete Hegseth said about allies.
And I think the President was clear this morning in his truth that there are countries around the world who ought to be prepared to step up on this critical waterway as well. It's not just the United States Navy. Last time I checked, there was supposed to be a big bad Royal Navy that could be prepared to do things like that as well. So he's pointing out this is an international waterway that we use less than most, in fact, dramatically less than most. So the world ought to pay attention to be prepared to stand up. President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran.
Big economic implications as well in regard to what is happening here, because Starmer has called a COBRA meeting, an emergency committee meeting today about the economic aspect of this, although they are apparently raking in another £20 million a day in extra tax because the price of petrol has gone up. Sebastian, what do you make of the leader of your party's actions, interactions, and this big and continuing row with the United States on this, Sebastian?
Yeah, it's a very delicate one to walk, isn't it? And look, I'm glad we didn't jump in at the start. I think that has now been shown to be the right call. The line about the raking in 20 million a day, I don't quite buy it, because you've got the borrowing costs that have gone up so much. That's going to be offset by that. And
there's still cash coming into the Treasury.
It's cash going into the Treasury.
It may not help that much. And of course, we're dealing with, benefits, for example, have gone up 6.2%. Yeah. There are a lot of pressures on the money. But it is more money for the Treasury, and if you're filling up a car, you're feeling that.
But it's going to go out very quickly when your borrowing costs rise. I remember we're paying interest on our national debt, and yes,
all of that's bad, though.
It is bad, but what I'm saying is it's being offset. Look, I think this is a comms exercise at the moment. People say, why hasn't the government jumped in with some kind of a scheme? I think it is going to get worse, and I think the idea is to avoid a situation like what we're seeing in some other countries where the petrol has run out, there are queues at the pumps, everybody's panicking, everybody's hoarding. It's the COVID toilet paper analogy we're trying to avoid, really. So I would not be surprised if they come in with something slightly down the line, but it's about steadying the nerve at the moment.
Well, John Healey, he's just back from the Gulf, and we haven't actually heard much from the Defence Secretary, to be fair. I would rather see a much more open dialogue with the country and him and the PM, which we're not getting. So again, that's down to comms. It was reported the other day that the Labour Party and the Cabinet were actually looking at consumer historic purchasing power and what consumers do and what our behaviour in times like this. And I would say, well, don't bother looking at that. You've got the COVID pandemic. You could see the way that people were going. You have the ability to, I mean, like it or not, but they do have the ability to shut everything down, to tell people you can only make an essential journey. You cannot do this, that or the next thing.
But given the history of lockdown, Claire, how many people are actually going to listen?
Well, that's the other thing.
And how do you enforce it?
Exactly. Do we want ICE people on the streets, making sure people aren't out, aren't driving their cars?
It's really interesting Claire mentions that. Let's just hear a little clip from the Prime Minister, actually. He was advising against the panic buying of fuel. This was yesterday that the Prime Minister was speaking. Let's hear what he had to say.
I recognise the concern that this is causing people. Fuel duty is frozen until September, and the advice from the various sectors is just normal use, no need to do anything other than what's normal, but obviously we're bearing down on energy costs.
Keir Starmer there talking about panic buying. I mean, it is a worry for a lot of people who may not know necessarily or even be that interested in what's happening in Iran, but the effects of it are right here on the streets of the UK, Sebastian.
They are, but you know what surprised me? EasyJet saying that this is the biggest Easter ever for foreign travel. So people are jetting off on their holidays. Now, look, I know that aircraft fuel is hedged, so you don't feel the price rises for another couple of months.
And also people will have bought those flights probably months ago.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And they might be cancelled flights from not being able to go to the United Arab Emirates. So they might have, be going somewhere else.
They may well be, but some semblance of normality there in the travel industry at least. Look, on the debt stuff, just going back to that, I saw a really striking quote in the story from the Mail from Howard Davies, who was the deputy chair, I think, of NatWest, deputy governor of the Bank of England, chair of NatWest, big economist, said that if the borrowing costs that were established last month because of the surge maintained, we blow a £12 billion hole in the finances over the course of a year. So this is a really, really serious issue economically as well. We've had so much chat about black holes, and it looks like we might be able to walk into another one. Yeah, exactly.
I want to talk more about migration in just a second, but let me just read out some various messages that have come in, particularly in regard to a recycling bill in Ipswich says currently glass goes into the bottle bank and glass goes into other recyclables. What about safety over broken glass? That's a very interesting point as well. In Cardiff, says Alex, we have 6 bins. I have a mother, immobile, she has vascular dementia. My father needs a knee replacement and I'm recovering from a severely broken leg. I've just had to put out all these bins this evening, my goodness. So there we are. Alex messaged in about Coke earlier on. I said I did say Coca-Cola, so there we are. Also on bins, Ange says the recycling is a load of nonsense. Frequently when collections are missed, they collect the paper and plastic bins in the same lorry. Also the bottle banks are separated by colour, yet all get chucked in the back of the same lorry when collected. It's all window dressing, it's virtue signalling nonsense. What would you say about that, Sebastian?
It's not. I mean, it's obviously going to be sorted. Any council that tells you they're sorting your waste and then secretly doesn't is in for a rude awakening when that gets uncovered. I mean, it's easy to draw that conclusion when you see the way the waste is collected, but it's just not happening.
Claire, do you mind me reading out a comment about you? It's a positive one.
Be brave.
Gary in Glasgow says...
Oh, I love Gary. I know who Gary is. Right, what does he say?
He says, just had to say, the Claire Muldoon is looking fantastic.
Oh,
Gary, Lambrini's in the post, love.
I don't know if she's been working out or using some moisturiser, but she's looking 10 years younger.
I heard producer Dean just laughing at that.
They think it's soundproof, but it's not. Dean is trolling us both because Dean, the producer through the glass there, is laughing at that and he's drinking a can of Coke as well. So there we are, full sugar Coke. Right, let's talk about migration, because the UK-French deal to tackle small boats will no longer expire at midnight. It's been extended by 2 months. Is this an act of desperation? Is this a good thing? Should we say the government has done a good job here, Claire? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with what Shabina Mahmood's trying to do. I think she's the only minister that's actually tried to tackle this head on. Before her, we had Yvette Cooper, who wanted to smash the gangs. There was nothing done since the Boris wave to help anything at all, and she's actually standing up to the French. She's actually saying to them, look, you need to monitor what you're doing here, and we will not pay you unless we get the results that we need. These are waters that are, you know, that are being invaded, really, by illegal immigrants. There's nothing legal about them, otherwise they would take legal routes. And I'm sorry, they're putting them, not only themselves at risk, but also the risk of the volunteers of the RNLI that are compelled to go out and help anyone in distress. There just seems to be no concern at all. The French were telling them years ago that we were the El Dorado, don't forget. Yeah, go to Britain, you'll get everything, it'll be great, they said.
This is the Home Office confirming the £6.2 million enforcement surveillance package that says that negotiations are continuing still over Britain's attempts to reach an improved deal. The point of this, I mean, I agree with you that Shabana Mahmood is the strongest person on this. I wonder what Sebastian thinks. And also, Sebastian, what does it say that we have to pay the French to essentially do what many people would argue is their job anyway?
Well, if we don't, and they stop patrolling the beaches, then more people come to the UK, and there are many people in this country who wouldn't want that to happen. So we are helping to minimise this issue. You have to think of the asylum process as a pipeline, and we've really got a handle on a lot of it. So the backlog is down, enforced removals are up, so further down the pipeline there has been a lot of success. What is the difficult part is stopping people coming in the first place. So I personally would take all the help I could get on that, and if you can knock off a third of them in France and make sure they never come in the first place, that is a positive step towards reducing that number. Now, Claire, you talked about them having coming by other means. The reality is they can't. Most of these people do not have legal routes. They are forced, if they want to claim asylum in Britain, to come by
No, that's what I said.
boats.
So if they were legal, if they were coming from a refugee status, that they could then arrive at Border Force and present and just say to the Border Force official, look, I'm seeking asylum. That then starts the clock.
But you can't do that.
Well,
how do they get on the plane?
Speak to people from Border Force. They do. And then
you wouldn't be allowed on a plane if you don't have a visa.
But the point is, Sebastian, they don't have to come here. They don't have to come here.
No, but there are people who are fleeing war, and
they're not. France is not a
war-torn country.
No, and France already takes more migrants than we do. But the point
doesn't mean we should take any or more.
I would be deeply ashamed to live in a country where we turned our backs on people fleeing.
So how many would you take?
Reality.
Hold on a second. How many would you take?
I'm not going to give you a number on how many I'd take. What I would say is that as people come...
Why not give a number?
Because it's completely arbitrary. I could say 1, I could say 1 million, I could say 100,000. It would just be silly, wouldn't it?
Well, it wouldn't be silly.
Well,
because it wouldn't, and I'll tell you why.
Go on.
Because if we're in a situation where we know that there are many problems with, for example, school places, housing, major issue, GP surgeries, getting appointments, we know that even one more person is going to cause a problem. Now, migration overall has gone down to a huge degree, but the point is that people coming here legally, that's gone down. There are lots of people leaving as well. But the point is that if you have people coming over illegally in boats, we don't know who they are, they're being assessed for asylum. Some of them are legitimate asylum seekers, but they're arriving here illegally. Surely you can put a figure on that.
They're only arriving illegally because we have made it illegal.
No. You're saying because we've made it illegal, but that neglects the point which you accepted a second ago, which is that they don't have to come here.
Well, they don't have to do anything. They can do what they want.
But they can't, because, I mean, I could happily... I have relatives who live in Australia. It's a lovely country. I could just say, well, I'm just going to go and live in Australia. But the Australians would say, legitimately, no, you're not going to do that.
Well, no, because if you wanted to go to Australia, you'd have to go on a leaky boat and turn up on their shores and claim asylum and be stuck in their system for ages. That wouldn't be a very pleasant thing to do. Nobody wants to claim asylum if they don't have to. Nobody wants to get on a leaky boat where they might die. These are not things people are doing through choice.
I don't think...
You've just accepted a minute ago they don't have to do it. They don't have to get on that boat.
Well, you could stay in your home country and die. That's the other option.
Or you could stay in France.
But where are the women and children? Are they just being left to die?
No, because often if you are a man, you are under greater threat in some countries. For example, if you're at war, you're more likely to be conscripted if you're a man.
Well, so they should be staying in their
child.
country to fight for their country.
Well, it depends which country.
Well, but the only ones that seem to be coming are ones that have paid to come over, are paying for it in slavery, in my view, which is absolutely abhorrent, and yet they don't even know where they're going, why they're coming. They're just in a boat because it costs money.
Final word from Sebastian, then I want to talk about bananas.
All I would say is put yourself in their shoes. We are all, many of us, very, very lucky to be born in Britain. We don't have to think about these things. If you were born in Afghanistan or Eritrea, it would be a very, very different reality, and I would hope to see some compassion towards me, much as we should show compassion towards them. Banana time, let's
talk about bananas.
Let's show it to your mother and your sisters first before you.
Bananas.
Oh, I have.
Bananas galore in Orkney after a store has ordered 38,000 bananas by mistake. This is Tesco in Kirkwall, intended to order 380 kilograms of the fruit, but a slip-up meant it ordered 380 wholesale boxes, each containing about 100 bananas. Claire, what do you make of this?
Absolutely nuts, because you would
have
thought
surely.
Bananas. You would have thought though that Tesco's would have highlighted an issue here with their ordering. Even it might be EPOS called now, electronic
point of sale. Yes, indeed.
So it's all electronically
done. Have you ever ordered too many of something by mistake?
Never.
Okay. Sebastian?
I'm on a budget.
Sebastian?
I can only tell the story anonymously, but I accidentally ordered over £100 worth of takeaway during lockdown that I billed by mistake to a mega pop star.
What?
My partner worked with this person,
right?
And during the time she worked with them, she billed some food to their account, but accidentally left the card on her Deliveroo account.
Wow!
And so we spent many weeks
enjoying
delicious kebabs. We got a text from her musical director saying, "Could you please pay us 120 something pounds? You have been dining out on this person's card for too long." I wish I could tell you who it was.
But you paid the money back.
We had to pay it back.
Oh, very disappointing.
Sadly.
Very disappointing. My goodness, have you ever got anything free from a celebrity?
I'm not telling you.
Well, I'm not a celebrity, but I will tell you that the Church of England says Monday, Thursday is the end of Lent. So there we
That's
are.
not a real church.
There is one true faith when it comes to Claire Muldoon. I will be happily having...
It's the only reform that I'm not in agreement with.
Very good, very good. Lots to discuss. Thank you to Sebastian and to Claire, having the greatest example of what I want on this programme, on the Evening Exchange, which is, of course, to disagree without being disagreeable, and that is what we have done this evening. Lots to discuss. Tell me what you think about what Sebastian and Claire have said. 0344 499 1000. Lots more to come between now and 10 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good evening. Welcome to the Evening Exchange. Great to have you with us. There's lots to report on and talk about between now and 10 o'clock. John Rentoul is going to join us in a second. Get your own oil, Trump tells Britain. Also, Starmer's been at Cobra today because of all the different implications of all of that. Also, Carl Turner, the Labour MP who's been a frequent voice in the recent weeks on this station, well, he has been suspended from the Labour Party. He's lost the whip. Is that fair? We'll talk to John Rentoul about that. We'll see what happened there. And Graham Stringer, another MP in the Labour Party, says it shouldn't have happened and the whip should be restored. We'll talk about all of that. We'll take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes about Scott Mills as well. A big story at the BBC. We'll talk about that a little bit later on this hour. And my favourite story today is about bananas, because in Orkney they've given away bananas after accidentally ordering an estimated 38,000 of them, almost double the entire population of the Orkney Islands. Lots to discuss this evening. I want to discuss it with you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. Anna did that earlier. 0344 499 1000, of course. You can also pick up the phone and make a call on that number, or give me a text on WhatsApp on that as well. Lots to discuss between now and 10. Thanks so much for your company here on the Evening Exchange. We've also had a spirited debate about when the end of Lent is. Apparently the Church of England says it's Thursday, Catholic Church says it's Sunday. I've been off Diet Coke for, I think today is day 42, and will be tucking into one on Friday morning, it must be said. Sally in Surrey says Lent ends on Easter Sunday, darling Peter, when the feasting begins, chocolate, etc. On Good Friday you shouldn't even eat meat. Hang on until Sunday, you can do it. Love, Sally. Sally, thank you. I don't think I'm going to do that, but I really appreciate it. Graham and Bushy has reacted to the name of the show, which we've revealed this evening, Peter Cardwell's Evening Exchange. He says maybe the show should have been called Peter Cardwell's Recycled Show. We have been talking a lot about bins. Robin says you win on the Lent thing, but he sent something in and I can't read it, unfortunately. It's too small on the screen. Nikki in Huntingdon says, my son worked on bins for a short time. We've had a big and spirited debate about bins on the debate desk a minute ago. After leaving the army, your previous texter is correct. It's all window dressing. The rubbish all goes to the same landfill. Dave from New Zealand, Tauranga, is that how you pronounce it? And we have a Kiwi out in the office. Can we ask him if that's how you pronounce it? Tauranga? I hope that's right. Dave says, along with Peter the ex-cop, Peter Blexley, these are the best guests I've seen on Talk, bearing in mind this is my morning show. So he's talking about Sebastian Salek and Claire Muldoon, and they are our regular Tuesday night debate desk guests. We're working around with the debate desk, getting the right people on at various times. Sometimes people are free, sometimes people aren't. But Dave, thank you, and I'm delighted to hear that you're watching in New Zealand. Zarina says, we have a misguided immigration system, a major problem. Sebastian's attitude is disappointing. And on the end of Lent as well, someone says Claire is wrong. It's midnight on Monday, Thursday. And Alex said the great group of people work together in the debate desk. So thank you for that. Also in the name of the show, Paul in Oxford says, what about Cardi peed off as the new show? I'm afraid it is called the Evening Exchange. And Pete says, just drink Pepsi instead, it tastes much sweeter. Well, I'm not drinking anything. I'm not drinking any fizzy drinks at the moment apart from fizzy water, but on Friday I will be back to the Diet Coke. Now then, on arguably slightly more important matters, let's talk about Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. Fascinating to see what Donald Trump has been saying on Truth Social. He says all of those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refuse to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you. Number one, buy from the US. We have plenty. And number two, build some delayed courage. Go to the Strait and just take it. You'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, says the president, just like you weren't there for us. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done. Go get your own oil. I haven't seen the president on the media today. I don't think that he has actually said anything on camera. However, Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of War, and he's talking about allies stepping up on the Strait of Hormuz. I wonder if we could just take a look at that clip, actually, and see what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary for War, has been saying.
And I think the president was clear this morning in his truth that there are countries around the world who ought to be prepared to step up on this critical waterway as well. It's not just the United States Navy. Last time I checked, there was supposed to be a big bad Royal Navy that could be prepared to do things like that as well. So he's pointing out this is an international waterway that we use less than most, in fact, dramatically less than most. So the world ought to pay attention to be prepared to stand up. President Trump's been willing to do the heavy lifting on behalf of the free world to address this threat of Iran.
Pete Hegseth there, the Secretary for War. Well, John Rentschel is Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. John, great to have you back in the programme. We had a slightly truncated conversation the last time, and I hope it's a longer one now, but it was a very good one the last time. It'll be a very good one this time, I'm sure. Go get your own oil, Trump tells Britain. What do you make of US-UK relations, and what does Starmer do about it?
It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, you know, we are used to Donald Trump. For 10 years, we've had to put up with this nonsense, you know, since 2016. But he's getting worse. And, you know, this idea that because America started a war and blocked a fifth of the world's supply of oil, that's somebody else's problem, and that we ought to sort it out. I mean, the guy is just losing it completely, and I suspect he's really worried about the fact that gasoline prices in the States are rising, because he doesn't understand economics. He doesn't understand that even though America is a net exporter of oil, it's still affected by international oil prices, because you know, American companies can sell on international markets, and therefore the price of petrol in the States has gone up, and that's making Donald Trump extremely unpopular. So he's beginning to lose his marbles.
Some people make that, well, I mean, we don't know whether that's the case or not. Ed Miliband, of course, a lot of people criticise him for saying don't drill in the North Sea because it won't affect the oil price. Surely if there's more supply, it will. That's just another aspect of that. Calling the Cobra meeting today and talking about what the economic implications are for the UK. We're all feeling this. What can Starmer really do about it?
Very little. That's the honest truth. I mean, he's calling a Cobra meeting in order to look as if he's doing something, and you know, there are some contingencies that he can talk to people about. You know, he may have to end up in the extreme position of having to ration petrol or diesel. So he needs to have all those options discussed. But there's very little he can do about it, and very little he should do about it. I mean, the idea that the government can borrow another ton load of money in order to protect people from international oil price movements, I'm afraid is for the birds. I mean, we've done that twice now, and it's you know, each time it's rendered the public finances in a worse state than before.
Starmer was talking about panic buying of fuel. This was yesterday. He said this.
I recognise the concern that this is causing people. Fuel duty is frozen until September, and the advice from the various sectors is just normal use, no need to do anything other than what's normal, but obviously we're bearing down on energy costs.
That was the Prime Minister speaking in the West Midlands yesterday. Does that calm you, John? Does that make you feel as if he's got a steady hand on the tiller here?
No, I'm afraid that's like Lance Corporal Jones saying, "Don't panic."
Don't panic. I mean, yeah, exactly.
It's. I mean, it's very difficult, I think, if you're Prime Minister, because there's very little you can say. You know, people will be stockpiling petrol. I mean, I know of places in the north of England where petrol has already run out of some garages. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what Keir Starmer can do. I don't think there's anything really sensible.
So you've heard about petrol shortages already, where there are garages where people cannot get any new petrol.
Anecdotally, yes, I have friends in the north who say that they have had petrol stations near them run out of petrol. But actually, it seems to be a pretty limited phenomenon, to be honest. I think most supplies are still running easily. But I mean, I've heard of a lot of people who have gone and filled up they've ignored the Prime Minister's advice, and they've gone and filled up their car by more than they normally would.
Yeah, and listen, I don't blame them for doing so, to be brutally honest, because the worst worst thing is when someone says, don't panic buy, and then it, of course, makes people panic buy.
Exactly.
Speaking about another panic within the Labour Party, we know that Carl Turner, no stranger to these airwaves, has been suspended from Labour. He's had the whip suspended. My colleague Kevin O'Sullivan asked another Labour MP who sometimes proves a little bit problematic in what he says to the Labour High Command, Graham Stringer. Kevin asked Graham Stringer about this earlier. Let's have a little look at what happened on Drive.
My final question about Carl Turner. Do I deduce from what you're saying that you believe that Carl Turner should have the whip restored?
I do. And I think that the party, not only for the reasons I've just given, should be careful about expelling people. From what I've read in the last hour, Carl has said he's prepared to have a by-election. That's threatening, but the last thing the Labour Party needs, where we are in the opinion polls at the moment, is a by-election. So it's not only wrong in principle, it's practically wrong to expel him.
We know that Carl Turner, who I've interviewed on a number of occasions, very, very angry about changes to jury trials. Now, the Labour Party says that they did email him today. He didn't open the email. He didn't see the email. We all get emails all the time that sometimes we see, sometimes we don't, telling him he'd been suspended, but there's no phone call. And apparently he actually tweeted about this and said it was broadcast producers getting into people who work here and other places getting in touch with him saying, hold on a second, you know, do you want to come on and talk about this? You've been suspended from the Labour Parliamentary Party. You've had the whip suspended. And that was the first he knew about it, because he hadn't actually seen the email. But of course it had gone out. Various journalists and Press Association and others had put it out and had reported it. John, do you think it's right to take the whip away from Carl Turner?
I don't think it was right to do it without a phone call. I think he deserved that basic courtesy, because, as you say, a lot of MPs must get an awful lot of emails. They can't read them all, so a phone call would have been helpful. But as for whether it's right, I mean, Carl Turner's saying, you know, just because I oppose the government on jury trials, actually, he abstained in the vote on.
That's right. That's right.
On jury trials, so he didn't. I mean,
he got a concession out of David Lammy, and one of and the Justice Secretary said that one of the people who was very annoyed about it, I think they were up to 60 or 65 at one stage, one of them would be on the scrutinising committee of it. Yeah. So is this just petty of the Labour High Command? We know, of course, they've suspended a number of people before from the Parliamentary Party. They've taken the whip from them. That's just the phrase that is used. And we know that is they've given the whip back. So could this be a temporary thing? Should it be a temporary thing?
It should be a temporary thing, but I mean, I don't think it's to do with Carl Turner's rebellion on jury trials. I think it's to do with. I mean, he has tweeted some fairly colourful comments about Morgan McSweeney's phone.
Well, he says he doesn't believe Morgan McSweeney,
and he said he didn't, but he doesn't believe. What he called him McSwindle.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe McSwindle's phone was really stolen. Now that, I think, is inflammatory, and I suspect that that's probably what got him suspended, because in effect he's saying, I mean, I know Morgan McSweeney isn't the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff anymore, but I mean he's essentially saying that the Prime Minister's a liar, and I don't think you can get away with that as a Labour MP.
Okay. John, very good to talk to you about all these issues. Thank you, John Rentoul, our Chief Political Commentator at The Independent. Someone says, how do you fill your car up more than you normally would? Well, not everybody fills it up the whole way. I do all the time. I fill a car. Well, anytime I drive a car, I usually fill it up the whole way. But some people don't. Some people, and actually, there's arguments that in a petrol or diesel car, it's actually more efficient to fill it up to about halfway, because if you have a heavier car and you're carrying more petrol or diesel, you actually get fewer miles to the gallon as a result of it. My dad explained it to me one time a while ago. The most interesting aspect of the news today is, of course, Bananagate. This is bananas in Orkney. 38,000 of them have been ordered by mistake, almost double the entire population of the Orkney Islands. They intended to order 380 kilograms of bananas, but instead ordered 380 boxes, each of which had about 100 bananas. So 38,000 bananas rather than 38,000 kilograms of bananas, which would be far fewer. Graham in Hertfordshire has some experience of supplying supermarkets. You're very welcome to the programme, Graham. Tell us your take on Bananagate.
So, I was a supervisor on nights of Turners and so on. You know, the Holly and Jesse Yeah.
I don't know that, Graham, but they're a supplier of wholesale goods, are they?
Yep. We used to ship out 30,000 boxes a night of citrus fruit to Tesco's main dealers. And the main dealer in Livingston, if somebody had flagged up 60,000 boxes of bananas, I would have gone screaming to my manager.
So even if it was 380 wholesale boxes, I mean, that's about 100 bananas each. Did anything like that ever happen, Graham?
30,000 boxes a night to Livingston. That's the Tesco main dealer.
Right, okay.
And if somebody would, we used to not bananas, apples, mandarins, tangerines, 30,000 boxes a night.
I mean, that's an awful lot. And then if that changed, if those orders changed, did you keep an eye on that, just in case there were too many or too few?
If somebody ordered 60,000 boxes of bananas, I would have flagged it to my management.
Did anything like that ever happen, Graham?
Well, there's a lot of things that have gone on in Turner's at Asylum that I would not like to go into at this point, but it's all about money.
Yeah, or maybe just someone making a mistake when it comes to Tesco's. Graham, thanks for your thoughts on that. He used to work at a distributor. An appeal was posted by Paula Clark, who's Tesco's community champion, apparently, on social media, with toddler groups, football clubs and local organisations showing up at the supermarket to collect boxes. So there are 2 bananas for every person on the Orkney Islands, and islanders suggesting different ways for their groups to use the fruit before it goes bad. Some's talking about baking banana bread, peeling, chopping and freezing the fruit as well. Other comments from school teachers saying that already popped along to the supermarket to pick up a box or 2, and the bananas are Tesco has apparently arranged to send the bananas out to Orkney's outer isles as well. So lots on that. If you have any thoughts on the bananas, do give us a shout, or indeed on Trump saying go and get your own oil. Lots of calls coming your way in just a second, including bins. Lots of people want to talk about bins. Whatever your view on bins is, give us a shout. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk bins. Stephen's in London and has some thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number he has called. This is a lot of different councils that aren't ready for the new bin rules. Stephen, what's your take on this?
Well, yes, I live in the borough of Harrow, and over 10 years ago, our food bins used to be emptied as part of the council tax. Then Labour got control, and they introduced a scheme where you have to pay on top. I call it a garden tax, and you don't have to do it. I'm lucky I've got an estate car and I only live 10 minutes walk away from the tip.
Yeah.
Now, prior to that...
Sorry, hold on. Is this garden waste or food waste?
Garden waste.
Garden waste, okay.
Yes.
Right.
It was included in the council tax.
And then it wasn't?
No. Now, if you're someone who's older, remember the rate system?
Mm-hmm.
It was included in that. Rates, council tax, it's the same tax.
Yeah. You still pay rates in Northern Ireland, actually. That hasn't been reformed,
Right,
so yeah.
It's the same tax, just a different name, that's all.
Yes.
Right? And they brought it, they suddenly you've got to pay on top. Now, I'm lucky. I live 10 minutes drive away. I've got an estate car. And originally, the brown bins are emptied every week. It's once a fortnight. So they want you to pay on top, and instead of getting emptied once a week, twice a week. So like I say, I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I live fairly close. So
Do you do a lot of gardening yourself, Stephen?
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where Labour, this is why I'm saying you're being a bit flippant about it. This is one of the very first things where Labour, if you notice, they're taking our rights away from us. And the unfortunate thing is...
How is it taking your right away from you by charging you for something? I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying it's not really a right, is it?
Well, yes, it was included in our council tax.
Yeah, but it's not a right. It's not a right to have your...
Well, not a right, but they're taking services away. They're lowering in our quality of life, basically.
Yeah.
Now, the point is, the Conservatives, Harrow is a blue island in the middle of London. Actually, it's got a Conservative council, but they did not repeal it. They haven't changed it one iota.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got elections coming up, so they can.
And this is often the way as well, isn't it? Because they say, "Oh, isn't this dreadful that this council of an opposing colour did this?" But then they don't get rid of it when they're in government. The thing is, Stephen, of course, that I don't know about your council tax. I live in London, and my council tax has gone up.
We've had our local waste bins removed from down the road by the Conservatives.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's got even worse.
Yeah.
But Labour, it's a garden tax.
Okay.
Under the radar.
Yeah, because lots of people who don't have gardens, for example, people who live in flats and so on. Why would they pay it?
Yeah, but I mean, I know. But for those of us who had it as a regular service, they changed it.
Yeah.
Radically.
Okay. Listen, thanks for that, Stephen. Appreciate that. Many thanks for that. Just reading some breaking news now. A judge has temporarily halted the construction of Trump's White House ballroom. That's all we know so far. We'll get some more information on that as it comes in to us. But all we know at the moment is that a US judge has temporarily halted President Trump's White House ballroom construction project. We knew there were a number of different aspects of that. Certainly when it came to the architects and various people who signed off the design plans, they had to have certain qualifications and so on. Some of them didn't. And that has been a big ongoing legal battle. If there's more on that, we will of course bring it to you. And later on in the programme, actually, we're talking to someone who knows American politics back to front, Matt Belinsky, who's the host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. We will talk to him a little bit later on. But I want to talk now to Ian, who's in Bridgend, about the BBC. And certainly the Scott Mills controversy is something we're going to talk about actually with a former BBC presenter in a few minutes' time. But you have some views on the BBC, Ian. What would you like to say?
No, sorry, Peter. Just to say, I rang up because I heard the discussion about the BBC.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that as an introduction by way of we seem to be obsessed with this issue with the BBC, but I'm concerned about this attack in Derby the other night.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There was quite a lot of coverage of that, but it seems to have faded away to some degree. Yeah.
We had that attack with the ambulances, didn't we? And straight away, it's an anti-Semitic attack, and wall-to-wall coverage. A bunch of local kids get mullered by a car, I think. It was just...
Well, it was someone driving a car, yes. That was in do you know what, I actually used to work in Derby many years ago, and Friars Gate is where it happened, bang in the centre of Derby, near the beautiful cathedral there in Derby. There was a lot of coverage of it at the time, but it seems to have faded away. I know counter-terrorism police, Ian, were involved in investigating it, but they didn't call it a terrorism incident. But it has faded out of the headlines. Do you think it deserves greater scrutiny?
Definitely, yes. As I say, the attack on the ambulances, that was wall-to-wall coverage straight away. It was an anti-Semitic attack. Read into that what you will. And
well, I think it was an anti-Semitic attack. I think that's what it was, but we don't know. I mean, the problem with Derby, Ian, is that we don't know, was this someone who careered off the road? Was it someone who did it deliberately, or was this a terrorist? And we just don't know the latest on that, do we?
No, I know, but it's the way, as you say, it's faded into the background. There's been no coverage of it at all. It's very suspicious, isn't it, when it seems to be attacks against the indigenous compared to other groups in society. Yeah. And Mr. Starmer, again, has been very silent on it, hasn't he?
Well,
it must have raised a lot of concern locally, but we hear nothing about it.
Well, listen, do you know what I'm going to try and do over the break, actually, and I'm going to see what the latest is on that, and see what Derbyshire Police are saying, because I don't know what the latest is, Ian, but I will find out for you, because it has faded out of the news. Lots to discuss in a minute on Scott Mills. We're going to talk to a BBC presenter. In the meantime, Mark in Selby's been in touch and says, "Evening, Peter. Has the person who made the banana order mistake? This is 38,000 bananas that were ordered for the Orkney Islands rather than 380 boxes, which would be... there were 380 boxes that were ordered rather than 380 kilograms, which would be significantly fewer bananas." And Mark says, "Has the person who made the banana order mistake split from the company? Will they start an app appeal to cover any potential costs of their slip-up?" Says Mark. Mark, you know we hate puns. I can't stand wordplay in any way. It's just really basic and very, very lazy. So I'm afraid I just cannot support that whatsoever. Only joking. That was fantastic. Well done. We're going to make like a tree and leave, and but we will be back. They know when I have puns coming. Have I ever told you? No, just for that, to the team behind the glass, I'm going to tell you my best pun ever, which I was very, very happy with, which was when I was going to see James Bond with my dad. And I was at a cinema in Northern Ireland, and my dad is a big Shakespeare fan, and there were really big popcorns and drinks and whatever, and he said, "Gosh, there's a lot of food and drink that we're bringing into this James Bond film," to which I said, "Yes, there's something of a feast at the Spectre." Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're just finding out what Derbyshire Police are saying on that, what the latest line is on that attack that happened. It was Saturday night. It was reported pretty extensively, including by some of my former BBC Radio Derby colleagues, actually. A very good woman called Pamela Gupta, who I worked with previously. She was reporting on it on Sunday, but haven't heard a huge amount of it nationally since then. So the top team behind the glass are looking into it. I will get the latest on that, as I said, with Ian. I thought it would just be on Twitter, but it's not, because Derbyshire Police have moved off Twitter. They're now on Facebook and Instagram, and I just haven't had a chance to look in that short period of time. We're going to talk now, I'll talk in just a second actually about Scott Mills, but there was one message that came through from Tad that I wanted to read out on bins. He said, what about the resident sorted rubbish that is put into different coloured bins but then ends up in one landfill site in Northern Ireland? It tends to make a nonsense of it all, says Tad, and thank you for that, Tad. I want to talk about Scott Mills now, who is the BBC presenter, biggest BBC breakfast presenter, or breakfast show on Radio 2, and he has been there for a few years, but actually, interestingly, he's been sacked, of course, and there are so many questions around this now about who knew what when. And a couple of hours ago it was revealed by the Telegraph that a former BBC presenter contacted the corporation in May last year to say she had received information about alleged inappropriate communications involving Scott Mills, and asked whether the broadcaster was ever aware of or involved in any related matters. We're going to talk about this with Harvey Proctor as well, the former MP who was subject to horrible, scandalous rumours and allegations which were not true during the Coral Beach fiasco, the Operation U-Tree fiasco. Anna Breeze on Scott Mills, is a freelance journalist, also asked the BBC whether it had ever received any formal or informal complaints about Mills relating to safeguarding inappropriate conduct or harassment, and whether it had ever conducted an internal investigation into him. She did not receive a response. Today the BBC admitted her information should have been followed up and we should have asked further questions. Let's speak now to Sally Jones, who is a former BBC presenter herself. Sally, it just seems that the BBC lurches from one scandal to the next, and yet again, so many questions about this. The first rule of any form of, if there's any sort of scandal, any sort of PR, you get all the information in the public domain, but still, every journalist in Britain, including us, are asking some really, really basic questions about this. Did the BBC know of these allegations when they appointed Scott Mills? Answer has come, there none.
Exactly. And at first it looked as though they'd actually jumped ahead of themselves by sacking Scott Mills before it was totally certain that that there were real questions to be asked about him. What we didn't know until a couple of hours ago was that the questions were asked back in May of last year. So in a way, they've yet again buried their heads in the sand, maybe thinking, well, he's incredibly popular. He's one of our brightest stars. He did everything. I mean, he was incredibly popular, pleasant. He was one of those people who was rather a sort of basic presenter. Anybody could like him, you know, there was no kind of, and he could turn his hand to anything. And I think that the BBC felt, unless we're forced kicking and screaming to start making any kind of probe into this, we're going to leave it well alone. I mean, we've just heard Jeremy Vines saying that it seems very unfair on Scott Mills. This was before the allegations from Anna Breeze came to light. That just because there'd been no charges laid against him in 2016, that therefore there'd been no crime. Well, it may well be that there was no crime, but no charges doesn't necessarily mean no crime. Yeah. And it's really sad to see the BBC yet again
just to keep us
burying
both,
their heads.
Sally, sorry to interrupt you, just to keep us both on the right side of the law. We know that Scott Mills hasn't been convicted of anything, indeed was never even charged with anything, because the Crown Prosecution Service said that there wasn't an evidential burden of proof that would lead to charges. What we do know is that something was alleged. And we don't know exactly what that was. We know that it may have involved someone who's under 16. Why doesn't the BBC just come out and tell us what the truth is in all of this?
I think it's almost as though they have a death wish, or at least they're just trying to kind of keep a lid on it, keep a cap on it. it's incredibly sad, because if Scott Mills is innocent, then this is merely going to ruin whatever career he might ever have had in future. If there were any guilt or any misbehaviour, as according to the allegations, then of course the BBC should come out. It's almost as though it's all the time trying to play its cards close to its chest, keep quiet about whatever the problem is. I mean, for years there have been people who've misbehaved, whether or not they've actually committed a crime, be it Greg Wallace or Hugh Edwards or whoever. And the BBC, because they're well known, because they're popular, it seems desperate not to be dragged to give any concrete evidence of what the allegations are until it's absolutely forced out of them. And as you say, it's the first rule of PR: get your story out there before the allegations and before it sort of kicks off into something even worse. Yes. I mean, they may have thought that at first that they were sort of doing it for Scott Mills's welfare, that there may have been, I don't know, anxiety, depression, or all the things that
he hasn't said anything, which is very interesting. I just want to play this clip from Radio 2, actually. Jeremy Vine in conversation with a man called Steve Chalk. This was earlier on.
You know, for me, Scott had become a friend in this place, in this very studio, in the studio across the way there, over this last year and a half, and had been in often and sat and chatted with him often. So my thoughts, my heart, my grief, my pain is for him, and also for any victim of any crime and their family and everybody involved in this. I found
we don't. And when you say crime, the whole point is there wasn't a crime, and that's where this gets difficult.
Yes.
Because the Met have been over it, and there's no crime. The CPS looked at it, so therefore we are dealing with something you would call misbehaviour.
Yes, so,
you can get fired for misbehaviour.
Yeah, absolutely.
So lots to chew over in all of that, and that was the Reverend Steve Chalk, who frequently appeared on Scott Mills's programme. What does the BBC do now, do you think, Sally, especially as a new Director General is coming in?
I rather wonder whether the sacking of Scott Mills was the sort of last hurrah from Tim Davie, and that the new Director General has got to be a good deal more transparent, has got to be proactive about getting whatever facts are known out there, however embarrassing and difficult they are for the BBC, because certainly the Anna Breeze allegations are going to be very difficult. And I think that he's just got to be absolutely straight down the line and really get the truth out there as soon as he can. It's the only way that he's going to win trust and win the public's trust, because with the licence fee coming up for renewal, public trust is going to be crucial. They've already got the big questions over bias and, sort of bias, whether it's against Israel or whether it's against Trump or whoever it's against.
Yeah,
they've really got to get themselves on the straight and narrow. I think the other thing that they've got to do is to make it clear to the rank and file people within the BBC that no one is above the law, because the sort of common factor with all these stories has been that the valuable talent, the Hugh Edwards or the Scott Mills, has been the one who, to a great extent, has been protected right up until the last minute. And then suddenly everything goes haywire and they're kicked out almost so quickly that they can't, their feet don't touch the ground. But in some cases, for example, Edwards, it should have happened a good deal sooner.
Certainly.
I mean, I was very tangentially involved years ago in the Frank Boff scandal, when somebody who was one of the most trusted presenters on the whole of the BBC, probably the most trusted, the most popular of his generation, was suddenly found to have done a good deal of misbehaviour. I don't think anything actually, most of it not criminal, but the fact that this man had suddenly lost the sort of image of an upright, charming family man and good Catholic husband and father. Again, he was out of the BBC so quickly. The moment that the allegations came to light in the news of the world.
Did you watch?
Although I do believe that a certain section of people did know about these things beforehand. I certainly didn't, and most of us at breakfast time, where I was working then, didn't. And it came as the most terrific shock. I can really sympathise with the people at Radio 2, where you've got a very popular and charming and kind, apparently kind, nice man like Scott Mills, suddenly having these allegations made against him.
I was talking to someone who works at BBC Radio 2 recently, not, I should say, Jeremy Vine, someone else, who was telling me it came as a complete and total shock. Sally, did you watch the Hugh Edwards docudrama yourself?
I watched part of it. I've had various things happening here, including hardly being able to get up with a wretched relaxed throat and everything, so I watched as much of it as I could. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was very important that it was made. I thought it was very carefully done. I thought the involvement, I would have wanted to see, I mean, I'm a journalist, so maybe want to see a bit more of the Sun newsroom, but certainly the consideration that Victoria Newton, the editor of the Sun, put into it, the excellent reporting of Scarlett Howes as well, Ben O'Reilly, who I know is senior at the Sun as well, thinking about it, working about it carefully, and bringing it to that paper was very, very expertly done. The portrayal of Martin Clunes I thought was superb, and actually the time I was kind of most moved actually was the statement from the real victim, from the guy at the end. They've obviously given him a different name to protect his identity, but he talked about getting off drugs, which Hugh Edwards had often paid for, and moving on with his life. So it was very, very interesting to see it. And I think you're right. I mean, you've identified trust is one of the, that's the only thing that any broadcaster really has. You can have resources, you can have, fantastic technology and to travel all over the world and report all sorts of things. But actually, especially in a very democratized age of journalism and of broadcasting, where really anybody can broadcast from their kitchen or their bedroom with a mobile phone, that quality is there. The only difference really is resources and trust, actually. And when you lose one, the resources sort of difference between the BBC and someone sitting in their bedroom has narrowed to a huge degree. So the only thing that's left is trust, really.
Yeah, I also admired the documentary for its lack of sensationalism. Yep. It would have been so easy to do a sort of yeehaw kind of tabloidy approach to it, but there was great kind of probity about the way.
But the thing that we will have both learned in our career, Sally, is when a story is sensational, there is no need to sensationalise it. You just let the facts speak for themselves. Sally, thank you very much indeed. That is Sally Jones there, former BBC presenter. Grace is in London. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 and has some thoughts on Scott Mills. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi. Well, I don't listen to Radio 2 very often, but I heard this clip earlier that you played where there was Jeremy Vine talking to someone, and I heard you and your panellists thinking that it was another Radio 2 presenter.
It's Reverend Steve Chalk, apparently. I know that now.
Well, I told your producer that because I recognise Steve Chalk's. I recognise that voice while you guys were wondering if it was another Radio 2 presenter.
Thank you. Thank you for clearing that up, Grace.
I was thinking, no, that's Steve Chalk. And I remember Steve Chalk because when I was growing up, he was quite well known within Christian circles as a speaker and writer. And now what he tends to do is come on air to talk about his network of schools. And he's doing some really great work in helping people in his community and beyond with his Oasis Trust. But I kind of felt that while on the one hand, and I know that as a Christian minister, he's going to want to be compassionate towards Scott Mills in this, what must be a difficult situation for him, we also really need to, I think at this point, prioritise talking about concern for victims. It's absolutely the case that each person, even if they've done heinous things, does, as Steve Chalk said, deserve or should have a degree of empathy and compassion. Deserve might be the wrong word. As Christians, we really believe that all of us have done wrong, and we all need compassion and empathy and forgiveness from God. But at the same time, we, observing this situation, I think at this point, need not so much to talk about how we feel sorry for Scott Mills in the way that Steve Chalk seemed to be doing. I think we need to just at this point say, let's have concern for victims of...
And in fairness, Steve Chalk did that as well. And I mean, look, Steve Chalk, the Reverend Steve Chalk knows Scott Mills. It is a shock to him as it is to everybody else. And but it's very, very interesting what you're talking about there, Grace. And I mean, a lot of people struggle with that, actually. A lot of people struggle with the fact that people say, you know, even paedophiles, for example, even people like Hugh Edwards, deserve compassion. I mean, do you think, is there anybody who doesn't deserve compassion? Is there anybody, in your view as a Christian, Grace, who can actually just say, sorry, you're evil, you don't deserve compassion?
That's a really good question. I was just thinking as I was trying to get my thoughts out and doing it with a lack of eloquence, that deserve probably isn't the appropriate word, because actually none of us really necessarily deserve the forgiveness that we
maybe simply require.
Require is a better word, because I think actually what we believe and what we remember at this time of year, talking about Lent and everything, is that we're offered something, all of us, even though most of us have done nothing at all as heinous as what Hugh Edwards or anyone else has done. We're all actually offered forgiveness that we don't deserve, so they don't deserve forgiveness, and yet.
And that's kind of the point, I suppose, of what Christians believe Jesus did. Grace, did you see my discussion with Claire Muldoon earlier on when the end of Lent is?
I did, yes, and all that keeps coming to my mind is that there's quite a bit in the New Testament about not being too religious about the exact dates and days of things. So I think that you giving up Diet Coke is just a really impressive thing to have done.
I don't know if it's impressive.
But you shouldn't need to worry too much about exactly when you have it again.
But I want to beat Claire Muldoon. I want to be right. This is the point. I have to be right about this, Grace.
Well, Jesus didn't have Diet Coke at all, so it's hard to know what he would have said about when you can start drinking it again. One thing that Jesus says is that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The point being that when you take a break from things, the point is kind of that it helps you to contemplate God, not that you feel really under pressure.
Okay.
The point shouldn't be that you're feeling, I must do this in this way, because that's kind of not what Jesus was about. He wasn't about really strict rules, but you should feel that you've had time to reflect by not drinking Diet Coke.
42 days. I think 44 is going to be enough. Friday morning I'm having a Diet Coke. Grace, thank you for that. Very interesting, Grace in London there on the serious points and the less serious points, but not least about Scott Mills on the serious side. On the less serious side, Grace pointing out accurately that Jesus did not have Diet Coke. Also on the less serious side, Jonathan's been in touch, says, I hear the banana mix-up was carried out by a chimp. The chimp has now been apprehended and is eating bananas in custody. See what you did there. Very good. Loving the new name for your show, says Jonathan. So lots to discuss, not least about the bananas in Orkney. We are going to talk about something much more serious next, which is about the grooming gang inquiry exposing the police who ignored the abuse. Do you have confidence that that will actually happen? Because police officers who fail to investigate grooming gangs will be held to account. Its head, Baroness Longfield, has pledged. And just before we go to the break, actually, just an update on Derby, as I promised, because Ian in Bridgend, I promised that we would find out what the latest is in Derby. And a third person, Derbyshire police say, has been discharged from hospital after among 7 pedestrians hit by a car in Derby city centre on Saturday night. Detectives have been given more time to question a man arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after the car injured the group in Friarsgate at about 9:30 on Saturday evening. In an update at 6:20 yesterday, I think that's the last update. No, it was one of the last updates, sorry, was yesterday. Police revealed 4 men and 3 women aged between 36 and 52. All suffered serious but non-life-threatening injuries during the incident. 4 remain in hospital, but we know that a third person has been released there. Derbyshire Police said it's continuing to question a 36-year-old Derby man who was originally from India after being given extra time until today, until this evening actually, to hold him in custody. So if there's anything new on that between now and 10 o'clock, we will, of course, bring it to you. But Ian, thank you for that inquiry. We are going to talk about the grooming gangs inquiry and whether this will actually expose the police, whether it will properly not shy away from directly investigating things like ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of people involved. Lots to discuss in just a second. Stay with us.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk about the rape gangs inquiry now, because Baroness Longfield, who's the chairwoman of the inquiry, said some officers had been reluctant to act because of concerns about how it may look. But she said the inquiry will not shy away from directly investigating the specific ethnic, religious and cultural backgrounds of the perpetrators behind the rape gangs. Susan Hall is the leader of the Conservative group on the London Assembly. Susan, have you got confidence in this inquiry?
I've got an open mind about it. At least we've got an inquiry. I mean, when I saw Keir Starmer saying that it was jumping on the bandwagon for the far right, I thought we'd never see an inquiry. And I've spoken to many of the survivors, and it is truly atrocious. So at least we've got one there, and they've changed the actual terms of reference. At one point, I think we all thought that they weren't going to be looking at ethnicity, religion and culture. And so I'm very pleased to see that that's back in, because clearly it is an issue. The trouble is too many people are frightened of doing anything against anybody from a different background because you're immediately called racist. And that still happens. The left always call the right racist because that stops all conversation.
Does Baroness Longfield have a grip on this? Do you think that when she says we have heard that in some cases police officers and officials were reluctant to act, reluctant to investigate or prosecute because of concerns about how it may look, if this were the case, these decisions have had devastating consequences. Children paid the price for it. We will investigate any factor that contributed to patterns of abuse or how and why authorities failed victims and survivors. We will be led by the evidence. We will examine this directly, not to stigmatise any community, but where the evidence demands it and because victims and survivors deserve the truth. I mean, that kind of language seems to me anyway, and I wonder what you think, Susan, that she does appear to understand the incredible importance of this inquiry.
Yes, I think she does. I only hope she sees this through. And it's not just a case of the police not listening and understanding, although I've been devastated by some of the things that I've heard that the police didn't, when they didn't get involved. But it's also the care homes. It's also were politicians aware of it. And I don't care if they're politicians from my group, from Conservatives or Labour or Liberal, I don't care. Anybody involved in any sort of cover-up, it needs to be looked at and held accountable. And that's what the victims want, or the survivors. They want people to be held accountable.
Where do you think this should actually take place? Because it's going to spend the first 3 months deciding on the process and the criteria for selecting areas which should have an inquiry. Oldham and Greater Manchester is the only area confirmed. I mean, surely that shouldn't take 3 months, especially as this has been delayed to such a degree, Susan.
I know, it's absolutely diabolical. I mean, they've had to be dragged to this screaming and kicking. That's not good enough, Peter. It's not good enough. None of this is good enough. And the survivors look on in absolute horror because I think they think they'll never get any sort of justice. And everybody seems to talk about this as if it's absolutely in the past. And I talk to some survivors and they say, no, these gangs are still out there. It is still happening. So it's not something we can look into from the past, and I don't want to learn lessons, because we're all sick to death of that.
Well, absolutely. Do you believe the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, when she says the chairwoman and I have agreed that the inquiry will be laser focused on grooming gangs and will explicitly examine the role of ethnicity, religion and culture of the offenders and in the response of the institutions? There will be no hiding place for the predatory monsters who committed these vile crimes.
Well, I like the attitude of the Home Secretary at the moment. It's a shame her backbenchers seem to want to water down everything that she ever does. So at the moment, as I say, I'll keep an open mind. This is so important, though. It's about time it happened. And as for all this time it's taking, of course, it'll report after the next general election. And I don't think that's by any accident either.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the timing. Certainly it has taken far, far too long. Susan, thank you. That's Susan Hall there, leader of the Conservative group on the London Assembly. What do you think about what Susan said there? What do you think about this inquiry? Because a rape gangs inquiry was absolutely needed. Now it is actually happening, and we're in a situation where it's still taking far too long, but the attitude anyway, from what we've heard, appears to me to be right. It'll be interesting to see whether they follow through, what they do, whether we get the answers, and crucially the accountability on all of that. It's interesting when it comes to allegations of a sexual nature, certainly when it comes to what people are accused of. We know without shadow of doubt there has been widespread, dreadful rape, grooming of children, and this has happened, and indeed is still happening, as Susan correctly says, in our society. It's also interesting when people are falsely accused of sexual crimes. Harvey Proctor is going to join us in a few minutes, a former MP who was put through absolute hell, lost a load of money as well, and his life was absolutely destroyed when he was falsely accused of sexual crimes. He has been tweeting and talking a lot about Scott Mills and what has happened at the BBC. So we're going to talk to him in a second, alongside Luke Gittos, who is a lawyer and writer who has been writing about this today as well. There's a lot in this. There's a lot in not just the rape gangs inquiry, but the whole nature of how things are reported, how we deal with allegations around these very, very sensitive issues, how we treat people who've been accused of these things. Whatever you think, whatever your view, I want to hear it from you. There's plenty of time in the next hour on the Evening Exchange for you to get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Thanks very much indeed to Angie, who has sent me a WhatsApp. He says, hi Cardi P, loving the Evening Exchange. Great name. Well, it wasn't my idea, actually. It was sent in by a viewer. I'm afraid I've lost that person's name, but thank you to that person who it was anyway, and thanks to everybody who sent in suggestions. But it's been signed off now. We are the Evening Exchange, and lots more exchange of very interesting views coming up in the next hour. I hope you'll give me a ring on 0344 499 1000 to tell me yours.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good evening. Welcome to the Evening Exchange. Maybe you've been with us for the last 2 hours, in which case, thank you. If you're just joining us, there's loads more to discuss. Harvey Proctor, the former MP who Operation Midland alleged was a sex offender. He wasn't. His life was destroyed over that. He has some sympathy, or at least some identification, with Scott Mills and what the BBC presenter is going through now. We'll talk to him and a lawyer called Luke Gittos in a second. I want your views on all of this. 0344 499 1000. We'll also talk about Trump and what's happening in the UK and the very, very bad relationship. More from Trump today, slagging off the UK and saying that we should go to the Straits of Hormuz and get our own oil. We'll also talk about a story about bananas. Far too many of them have been ordered in Orkney. 38,000 of them, two for every single person in Orkney. It's just a nice, fun story we're going to do at 9:30 and talk about, or a little bit later in the hour, and talk about that. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it, now's the time. Pick up the phone, let me know what you think. As soon as we can, we'll give you a ring back between now and 10 and make sure we get you on the air and get your opinion out there to the nation. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice message 0344 499 1000. Keep it to less than a minute if you would. We'll play those out before 10 o'clock. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on that main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss, and 56 minutes now in which to do so before Pepri Hoskin comes up with her show between 10 and 1. So stay with me here on Talk. And yes, plenty as well to talk about this evening. About the name of the programme, it's called Evening Exchange, and that is the new name of the evening programme. And thank you very much to everybody who's sent in their suggestions. That is what the name of the show is, and we're going to exchange some views between now and 10 o'clock. Let's hear some from Twitter. Mark says the BBC recovered from Jimmy Savile. I'm sure they'll be fine. On the suspension, Amy says, of the Labour whip from Carl Turner, to me it seems dictatorial that no one can criticise any legislation. Also, there are many Labour MPs critical the potential removal of jury trials. Is Starmer going to suspend them as well? London Oil Trader says Starmer could cut tax on fuel. He could grant new oil and gas licences to promote less reliance on foreign fossil fuels, especially natural gas. It is wrong to suggest that Starmer can't do anything. Andy says on bin collections, we've been talking about this as well a bit earlier in the programme, no chance of food collections in Birmingham, Peter. We haven't had recycling collected for over a year, so I have to put it in the regular waste, and not a peep from the eco warriors. And Les says, my wife Deborah is over the moon with your new show, Peter Cardwell's Evening Exchange. In fact, she wants to exchange me for you, Peter. All I can say is Deborah is clearly a woman of great taste. So thank you for that, Les. And yes, many people getting in touch. And if you want to get your points across, 0344 499 1000 is the way to do it. I want to talk about Scott Mills because the BBC apparently knew about Scott Mills' allegations almost a year ago. This is the Radio 2 presenter of the biggest breakfast show in the UK on Radio 2, and he has been sacked over a series of allegations. There is more information on that today, which I'll bring you in a second. But first, I just want to play a clip of Jeremy Vine, another Radio 2 presenter, covering the story of his own station, speaking to the Reverend Steve Chalk about this.
You know, for me, Scott had become a friend in this place, in this very studio, in the studio across the way there, over this last year and a half, and had been in often and sat and chatted with him often. So my thoughts, my heart, my grief, my pain is for him, and also for any victim of any crime and their family and everybody involved in this. I found we don't. And
when you say crime, the whole point is there wasn't a crime, and that's where this gets difficult. Yes. Because the Met have been over it, and there's no crime. The CPS looked at it, so therefore we are dealing with something you would call misbehaviour.
Yes, so,
you can get fired for misbehaviour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very interesting from Jeremy Vine there and the Reverend Steve Chalk speaking on Radio 2 earlier today. Well, I want to bring in Harvey Proctor, the former Conservative MP. In a moment, I'm going to talk to Luke Gittos, who's a lawyer and writer who's been writing about this today. Harvey, thank you for joining me on the programme today. Many people will remember the absolute scandal of Operation Midland and the dreadful things that happened to you. You were compensated for it, but I'm sure that didn't even touch the sides of the dreadful impact it had on your life. What do you think about Scott Mills, given what we know today, Harvey?
What worries me is the continuation of the breaking of the principle of law in this country for a very long time now, and that is that one is innocent until proven guilty. And the BBC, by their methods and procedures, and if I may say so, the Metropolitan Police too, are trashing innocence until proven guilty.
What we don't know is whether Scott Mills was sacked because of, well, presumably because of criminal allegations, which, of course, he was not prosecuted on. The burden of evidence from the Crown Prosecution Service wasn't there. There is a difference, isn't there, between misbehaviour and between criminality, and what we don't know from the BBC is whether there were allegations of misbehaviour, whether there was an investigation, and whether he was sacked for that. And part of this is information, isn't it? Part of this is the BBC not giving us the full picture.
You are right. We do not know, I do not know the full facts. What I should say is that I don't know this man at all. I don't believe I've met him or talked to him, so I'm not in the same position as Jeremy Vine. But whether it is criminality or whether it is misconduct, the same applies to the BBC. They are not treating him with due procedures under the law, is what I believe. And that is, he has the right to be presumed innocent by you, by all the media, and certainly by me, who knows what it's like to be treated as not being innocent until convicted. Operation Midland, as you rightly said, was horrific, and the Metropolitan Police have not learned the lessons since then. Then, if you recall, their star witness made allegations to them, and before the police investigated them, they went on television and radio and said their star witness was credible and true, when he wasn't credible, and he certainly wasn't true.
What sort of an impact did that have on your life, Harvey? Because I followed what you went through pretty closely in the media. I'm sure many of our viewers and listeners did, but some of them will not have. So just tell me a little bit about the effect it had on your life.
The effect on my life was that my house, where I've been living peacefully for quite a number of years, was raided by the Metropolitan Police under search warrants which were illegal. The police had lied to the district judge, magistrate, to get the search warrants. I'm not saying that now without any evidence. My evidence is the district judge, who has said publicly, had he known the true facts, had he not been lied to by the Metropolitan Police, he would not have granted the search warrants. That's the first thing. Search of one's house is very intrusive. Secondly, they released my name. They say they didn't name me, but of course they did, to the media when they said they would not. Scott Mills's name has got into the media. I wonder how and why.
Well, the BBC, of course.
Thirdly, I'm not. That's a rhetorical question.
Sure.
I'm not.
Well, the BBC did release a statement with that information there, and it's all been sort of put together. What would your...
Can I continue? You asked me a question. I'm still finishing it.
By all means.
the third thing that happened to me was that I lost my job and my house because the two went together, and I couldn't continue working at Belvoir Castle because of the allegations which the police were saying were credible and true. So my life dropped completely. And then I started getting death threats. And so I had to leave the country for my own safety.
And all of these allegations, totally untrue, of course. You were vindicated, you were compensated, but I'm sure that didn't even begin to cover the expense and the huge worry that you had.
And their star witness was investigated not by the Metropolitan Police, but by Northumbria Police. And he was charged with perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 18 years in prison. But anyway, that is the fact. That is why I'm very concerned about this principle of maintaining innocence until proven guilty, whether it's the police or any other elements of the media.
Scott Mills hasn't said anything.
Why should he?
Well, I'm not saying he should or shouldn't. I'm simply.
It's entirely a matter for him.
Of course, and I'm not saying.
And I can imagine the stress and strains that he is currently going through. As I say, I do not know the background to this case. I do not know the man, but I do know what procedures should be taking place, innocence until proven guilty, and everywhere I see that principle being broken.
Okay. Harvey, just stay where you are for the meantime. I'm going to bring in Luke Gittos, the lawyer and writer, and then I'll come back to you in a few minutes' time and ask you for your reaction to what Luke is saying, or maybe I'll even get you to speak to one another if you're happy to do that. Luke, you've written about this today. What are your concerns about how this is playing out? Because to me, as a non-expert, I know a bit about the media. I don't know a huge amount about the law, but there seems to be a piecemeal information that's come out. We know as well today that the Telegraph revealing that a former BBC presenter contacted the corporation in May 2025 to say that she'd received information about alleged inappropriate communications involving Mills and asked whether the broadcaster was ever aware or involved in any related matters. She asked whether it had received any formal or informal complaints relating to safeguarding inappropriate conduct or harassment and whether it had ever conducted an internal investigation. She didn't receive a response, and then today the BBC admitting her information should have been followed up and they should have asked further questions. So the BBC admitting even on that small part of this that they had not properly followed their procedures.
Well, look, let's leave BBC procedures to one side for a moment and just emphasise something about the news that has emerged today. The fact that Scott Mills has been interviewed by the police should mean absolutely nothing. The police speak to suspects in criminal cases in the course of investigations merely because an allegation has been made, and they need to speak to that person in order to get their account. We do not know what Scott Mills said in the course of his interview. He might have responded to every single question. He might have been completely transparent about all of his dealings with the complainant. We just don't know. And, you know, on both sides of this, it's wrong to say that just because the CPS didn't charge him that there was definitely no crime. We can't know that either. The fact is we don't know the evidence in this case. We don't know the background. But the problem that we have in our society today is, you know, I can't express it any better than Harvey Procter can, because he's been through this process. And he knows personally how the destruction of the presumption of innocence has played out over recent decades, and it has been absolutely disastrous for justice.
What's behind that, do you think, that destruction of the presumption of innocence? Was there a time when people didn't say, oh, no smoke without fire, Luke?
Yeah, so we emerged in the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s from a time when complainants in sexual cases were not taken seriously. Investigations were poor, people weren't believed, they were disregarded if they had any doubt about their credibility, etc., etc. All of that started to change with the investigation into Jimmy Savile, when all of a sudden the Crown Prosecution Service recognised that significant mistakes had been made around the failure to prosecute Jimmy Savile. There was a report into Jimmy Savile's offences in which they referred to his crimes rather than the allegations against him, because by that point Jimmy Savile was dead, so they couldn't prosecute him, they couldn't libel him, so they included the witness evidence as sort of concluded fact. It was the first time where the police had used evidence as conclusive as to something happening, if you see what I mean. So it was a real reversal of the way that the police spoke about criminal offending. It was a real hallmark moment in the investigation of these offences, because they said explicitly in their report into Savile that they were treating the witness accounts as true. And that was quite an unusual thing for them to do. They were basically saying, well, he's not here to give an account of himself, so we're going to treat it as true. That moment was really seismic, because we then had the evolution of the Me Too movement, this kind of broader political response to those events, which, you know, brought to the fore a number of allegations about high-profile individuals which hadn't been followed through. And the results of Me Too were, I think, very, very bad for justice. There were some examples of people who probably got what was coming to them, but the other side of that was people who had their careers completely torn apart on the basis of allegations alone. And I'm talking here about not just Harvey, who I would certainly mention in the course of this, although he's not tied to the Me Too movement specifically, but people like Kevin Spacey. You know, we forget that this was a celebrated Hollywood actor of his generation, had his entire career expunged. You know, his entire body of work has basically been removed from public consumption for charges that he was acquitted of in the United Kingdom. There were some civil cases that were settled in the US, but a tribunal has never actually found him guilty of anything.
Do you think, Luke, do you think that when people say, sorry, my microphone there's a slight problem with it. Do you think when people say we should believe all victims, hashtag I believe her, etc., when people use social media or him in some cases to say that sexual crimes have happened, for example, allegations, of course, do you think that in itself has a problem? Is this an overcorrection, perhaps, from the fact that victims were victims were not believed and were ignored for such a huge length of time, and the scandal of all of that?
It's very important that the police believe complainants to the extent that they are willing to investigate them. The big problem in the 70s and 80s, in the bad old days, was that people were just turned away from the police's door because they didn't even take the complaint seriously. Now that's a problem, and that should have been that needs to be reversed. And you know, now police officers are trained very extensively in how to treat a first allegation, the importance of investigating it robustly, etc. What else happened during the Me Too movement was that in wider society, people started saying, well, I'm just going to believe allegations because they are being made. I'm going to accept them as true. And that meant that the punishment almost came before the trial in many of these cases. And, you know, once the cat is out of the bag in that regard, it's impossible to turn it back. You can't uncancel someone from these sorts of allegations. We've seen that with Kevin Spacey. Obviously, Harvey Procter has been completely exonerated and is now, you know, sitting in the position that he is. But he talks very candidly about the impact that it's had on his life. And
well, let's just go back to him. Let's just go back to him for a second, Luke, and put maybe some of your points to him. Harvey's still with us, Harvey Procter. I wonder what you make of what Luke Gatos has said there, Harvey.
I'm grateful to him for the comments that he has made, particularly with reference to me, and I quite support what he said about Spacey and being cancelled. Far too often people get cancelled. Now, where does this start? I'm sorry to say they believe the victim policy starts with a DPP who happens now to be our Prime Minister. In 2013, Starmer went to police forces up and down the country because he was concerned about the lack of rape convictions. And he told the police, henceforth, you will believe the victim.
Was that perhaps, just picking up on what Luke said about that a second ago, do you think that was misinterpreted? As in, Luke says, believe the victim to the extent that you investigate the allegations and take them seriously, treat them with dignity and look into the allegations, see if they're true or see if they are not, especially if someone's making such serious allegations for, one of the worst crimes that a living person can experience. We're in a situation, though, where that appears to have been misinterpreted and simply allegations were believed as fact, as you found to your cost, Harvey.
I believe certain police forces did exactly that. Certainly the Metropolitan Police felt that henceforth, after Starmer's intervention, they would believe the victim. And they waited and waited for a suitable opportunity to come along. And Carl Beach, Exaro, and other journalists provided them with that opportunity. They thought that they had made their careers in the police force, and they did believe him. And they went, as I said before, on TV and radio and said this man was credible and true. To do that meant that I was guilty as sin before any police investigation, before any trial. I should say, of course, that I was not arrested at any time during Operation Midland. The police did not go that far. They stopped short, but they made life very difficult for me, and they knew what they were doing.
Look, is there a legal way back from this? What do you think? Should we know that accusers have lifelong anonymity? What about the people they accuse?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's the answer. So for someone like Scott Mills, or for anyone in public life, there needs to be a broader political acceptance of the presumption of innocence and public support for that principle. I think anonymity is not the right way to go. Firstly, because I think as a matter of principle, justice should be done in public. We should know what our police forces are doing. We should know who they are arresting and why. They act in our public interest. And I don't think anonymisation is the right step. But I do think we need to figure out as a society, and I'm not saying this is an easy question to answer, but how is it that we embed the presumption of innocence in our discussion of these cases? Because Harvey's absolutely right. Our current Prime Minister is a big part of the slow erosion of that principle that we've seen over recent decades. I think it starts with the way that we talk about these cases. And I think actually Scott Mills, in the discussion I've seen online today, there are some green shoots. People saying, look, has he really been sacked for only being spoken to by the police such a long time ago about a historic allegation? There are people who are saying, people like Piers Morgan coming out and saying that the BBC need to explain in a bit more detail what justifies this sacking. So all of that, I think, is moving in the right direction. And I think that is how we really try and start to, the remarks of these high-profile people are important. They set the tone of the conversation. Absolutely. The way that we talk about these in newspaper columns on shows like this is really, really fundamental. Okay. So that's what we need to be arguing for.
Just finally, let me put that to Harvey Proctor. Is there a way back from this court of public opinion simply deciding things?
I hope so. I speak out on these subjects as often as I can, mainly because I know that there are many people who've been done down by being falsely accused. And whenever I have the opportunity, tonight it's your show, for which I'm grateful, I try to put across the views to try to stop people being falsely accused, and if they are, that they are treated fairly under the law. And the law should apply equally to all, whether it be Scott Mills, whether it be me, or whether people who are not known. And can I say this? I have a voice. It's a voice I didn't wish to achieve. In 2015, I was not a public figure. I become a public figure because of Operation Midland.
Yeah.
While I have a voice, I will speak out.
Harvey, thank you for speaking out this evening. I don't know about people viewing and listening at home, but I found that a fascinating exploration of the issues from Harvey Proctor, the former Conservative MP, and the lawyer and writer Luke Giddos. Thank you to you both. What do you think of what they said? 0344 499 1000. We'll take calls on this if you have some thoughts. Certainly Annie in Shoreham by Sea has been in touch and says, I'm not a fan of Scott Mills, but why has he been sacked at this point over an alleged incident which was not deemed a crime 10 years ago? There's so much more that we need to know about this before we make an informed decision. People jumping to conclusions all over the place. Trump has said to NBC News that the US military action in Iran is coming to an end. We're doing great and it's coming to an end. He said that in the last hour or so. Matt Blinsky, the podcast host, will be with us after the break to make sense of all of this. Lots more to come. We'll also talk about bananas. Stay with us here on Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Angie, who says, I'm surprised Carl Turner hasn't lost the whip or left the Labour Party before now. He's very critical of the Labour Party and Keir Starmer in particular. He belongs in Reform UK, says Angie. I'd be very surprised if Carl Turner joins Reform UK, but a very, very interesting point nonetheless, and thank you for that. Another interesting point from President Donald Trump, who's told NBC News in the United States that military action by him against Iran is coming to an end. We're doing great and it's coming to an end, says Donald Trump. Well, let's speak to Matt Blinsky about that. He's an attorney and host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. We heard as well, Matt, great to see you, by the way, from Caroline Levitt, the press secretary at the White House yesterday. She essentially said, you do the math, as she put it. It's actually maths, but anyway, to a White House reporter, saying that we're about 4 weeks into this, just over a month, and we know now that, or we know that we were told sort of 6 to 8 weeks that it were 4 to 6 weeks that it would happen. Do you see this coming to an end? Where are we with this military action, do you think?
I do think we're nearer to the end than we are to the beginning at this point. And this has been a lot of the bluster from the crowd on the right who believes that Donald Trump has betrayed them, that he promised so-called no new wars. That is not necessarily the case, but I do think Donald Trump is particularly sensitive to the American public's unwillingness to support an extensive war. I think he knew going into this that if anything, you'd probably get away with it for a month, maybe even 2 months. Starts dragging out longer than that. He's already seeing some electoral consequences, but I don't think those are electoral consequences that he cannot come back from. If this extends longer than the next month or two, then I think you're just going to start, Donald Trump is going to have some internal cognitive dissonance that he's going to have to align or at least solve there. So I don't think we're going to get to that point. And I'm seeing that, perhaps not universally, not 100% of the military objectives, but a significant portion of them have been accomplished, are close to being accomplished. So I think we're nearer to the end than we are to the beginning.
It doesn't seem that regime change is anywhere near happening. Of course, it's very difficult to protest against a regime when you're being bombed. We've heard so much more about the economic aspect of this, the Strait of Hormuz, Harg Island, of course, as well, and the oil there. And this extraordinary outburst, which was called by one of my guests earlier on shameful. I wonder if you agree with that when Donald Trump was talking, essentially said, go get your own oil, he said. We were talking about this, and he said on Truth Social, all of those countries that can't get jet fuel because of the Strait of Hormuz, like the United Kingdom, which refused to get involved in the decapitation of Iran, I have a suggestion for you. Number one, buy from the US, we have plenty. And number two, build up some delayed courage, go to the Strait and just take it. He added, you'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, said the American president, just like you weren't there for us. Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done. Go get your own oil. What do you make of that? I mean, it's very Trumpian, but how seriously do you think we should take it?
I think this is something, Peter, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and a very astute observer during the first Donald Trump campaign in 2016 said his supporters take him seriously, but not literally. His detractors take him literally, but not seriously. It is better to take him seriously, but not literally. This is how he negotiates. Compliance, good behavior, so-called, is rewarded. Objective lack of compliance, some consequences are visited upon. And this is a person that operates based on incentives. Very few people on earth operate by strict plus or minus incentives more than Donald Trump. He expects others to act on those as well. That if he believes that the UK, despite obviously the United States and the UK's warm and friendly and a generally allied relationship, that they are not on board with an initiative his that he believes they should be on board with, he will threaten some sort of consequence. Not maybe necessarily a direct consequence, but say, hey, it's a good idea to get on board with us, and it's a bad idea not to be on board with us. Does this mean that he's going to cut all aid and just disavow the United Kingdom next week? No, even though if someone took him entirely literally, they could interpret his commentary as that. That's why people need to stop looking at these comments in a silo. As you mentioned, it's very Trumpian. Look at his track record of how he speaks and how he negotiates, so-called. It's a lot of bluster, and I think that's just something that he is using to move the ball ahead, or at least in his direction with the UK.
Tell me about the American public, because he may well be running out of patience for this military campaign. Donald Trump, is he reflecting the American public? What are they telling him, Matt?
Well, the American public is, of course, incredibly fragmented, and it's hard to gauge them as one unified voice, particularly on this topic. I think he more so looks at his base, and there's definitely an aspect of his base that has left him, that interpreted him incorrectly previously, that was so dyed in the wool that he would be a peace president, would not engage in any military adventures or any foreign wars, that they believe this is already a betrayal regardless of how it all plays out. Donald Trump typically is very sensitive to that wing of his supporters. He hasn't been that sensitive to them in this regard. So I think he's kind of accepted that that's baked into the cake. I still think we're within the buffer. We're within the safety zone for the negative sentiment turned against him from this war so far, even though I think there's still a lot of potential for positive sentiment if it wraps up in the next couple of weeks. So I think we're still within the safe zone, but like I said, maybe starting in 3-4 weeks, we start creeping into the danger zone for Donald Trump, with the American public really turning against him, but we're not there yet.
This will seem slightly absurd to some of our viewers and listeners, but it'll make total sense to you. Tell us about the judge temporarily halting the construction of Trump's White House ballroom. What on earth is going on here?
It's strange. This is another aspect, particularly of the second Trump administration, with a lot of questions as to the limits or the scope of judicial jurisdiction and authority. And this is an odd one because this is seemingly just a music hall or just a performance center. Where necessarily would a federal court or any court for that matter even have authority to chime in on this topic? I'd have to look into that a little bit more, but it's been a battle between Trump and the judiciary over the past 12, 13 months. To what extent does the president have certain authority to take unilateral action versus what is subject to judicial review and what aspects are subject to judicial authority? So that's an oddity, and perhaps this is just a property that is technically under some sort of federal ownership or domain, and thus the courts exercise their authority in that regard. But you know, one of those many unique aspects to the Donald Trump political experience.
Very much so. Speaking just a bit more about Iran, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary for War, has talked about troops on the ground and what he will and won't say. He's been giving a press conference today, and this is what he's been saying.
We're not going to foreclose any option. You can't fight and win a war if you tell your adversary what you are willing to do or what you are not willing to do, to include boots on the ground. Our adversary right now thinks there are 15 different ways we could come at them with boots on the ground. And guess what? There are. And so if we needed to, we could execute those options on behalf of the President of the United States and this department. Or maybe we don't have to use them at all. Maybe negotiations work, or maybe there's a different approach. But the point is to be unpredictable in that. Certainly not let anybody know what you're willing to do or not do.
The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth there. Are Hegseth and especially J.D. Vance and Trump all singing from the same hymn sheet here, in your opinion, Matt?
Yes, but let's be honest, he's not wrong. This is a very common sense approach towards military affairs. It's somewhat, I'd say it's more so maybe newsworthy because we've deviated from that over recent generations where we've said, and some of this is in a reaction to our mistakes with Iraq, in that we are unwilling to go this path or that path or take A action or B action. It's not a good idea to make that public pronouncement in that regard because it gives, and we saw it was an issue with some people trying to tie the hands of the Israelis in the Gaza conflict. If the enemy knows that you are unwilling to take this step, well, then they know that that provides safe haven for them. You want to be unpredictable. You don't want to take any options off the table, particularly when your kind of main asset is overwhelming military force. Why would you go ahead and kind of negotiate against yourself and set limits on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Here in the UK, and indeed with you, the King's state visit to the US has been confirmed. We're in no great worry about it, no great worry that it was necessarily going to be cancelled. I don't think we were under that illusion to any great extent. I just wonder, with the US and UK relations sort of in the deep freeze, could this help things? We know that Donald Trump loves the royal family, Matt.
Sure. I think and once again, this is one of those peculiar, picadillos of Donald Trump's negotiating strategy that you see in speaking very aggressively with a lot of, brashly with a lot of bluster, but then personally, he does this with China all the time, says incredibly adversarial things about China, and then goes and shakes Chairman Xi's hand and says what a great guy he is. So it's a lot of more amicable personal relations while simultaneously in twin tracking kind of more aggressive commentary on a more holistic level. I think that's what you'll see here. And usually these personals are a little bit of the good cop and the bad cop when it's the same cop, right? Yes. And I think that's what you'll see here, and it'll probably heal the public perception to a certain extent.
Matt, always worth listening to your common sense. Thank you very much indeed. That's Matt Belinsky, host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. He's a lawyer as well. What do you think of what he said there? 0344 499 1000. There's a lot in what he said there, and this is Donald Trump saying to NBC News that the US military action against Iran is coming to an end. We're doing great and it's coming to an end. Well, when will that actually happen, and what will the result of it be? It looks as if the regime change that I want is further and further and further away, and of course we know that Donald Trump said to those people help is coming. I wonder whether they feel this is help. I wonder whether Iranians feel, and we just don't know because they can say so little from there, whether they feel that this could actually end up with regime change, because on the stated aims of what Israel wants as well, which I also want, which is a lack of ballistic missiles, no ballistic missiles for Iran and no nuclear capability, as well as regime change. What do you think about it all? 0344 499 1000. We'll take some calls in a few minutes, but we're going to talk about bananas first. This is a very, very important story. Bananas galore in Orkney after a Tesco store ordered 38,000 bananas by mistake. What's the worst mistake you've ever made? Have you ever over-ordered things? Let me know. Text them in 87222 with the word talk in your text, or you can send me a WhatsApp or a voice note as well. Have you over-ordered things? Have you had far too many, I don't know, pints of milk or mini eggs or whatever it is? I just say mini eggs because I had some delicious mini eggs today, I must say, for my lunch. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk bananas. Bananas galore in Orkney, 38,000 of them ordered by mistake. A supermarket has been giving them away after accidentally ordering 38,000 bananas, almost double the entire population of the Orkney Islands. Where have the Kit Kats gone? That's what I want to know. They went missing from a truck as well. Are they in the Orkney Islands as well? We should be told. Steve N. Allen is a comedian and broadcaster. Steve, what do you make of this?
Yep, very serious story. I think you're right on this one. We need to get to the bottom of it. It's not the first time Orkney has done a whoopsie as well, isn't it? So this time it's the Tesco over-ordering the bananas. They have a plan in place. Clearly it's not the first time it's happened, because if you end up with too many bananas on your Orkney Tesco, they can normally return them. But due to bad weather, they couldn't, which is why they've been saddled with more bananas than they have people. And I'm glad it's happened. It is the funniest fruit. If you were going to make a mistake with any fruit, it has to be banana. The kumquat's quite hilarious, but the banana for this is the one to go for.
I mean, the kumquat is amusing simply because of the name, whereas the banana has many dimensions, which are interesting too. I mean, David Miliband's political career never really recovered after he carried that banana.
Yes, so they've got political damage. You can also pretend that they are some sort of a weapon. They can pretend they're a phone. I mean, they're falling over. Everything works for the bananas. So this Tesco absolutely done a whoopsie by ordering way too many.
Slipped up one, might argue.
The last time this happened, though, it was too many Easter eggs. 2 years ago, there was an independent shop that over-ordered Easter eggs and ended up having to do a raffle.
How many Easter eggs did they order? Well, in the Orkney Islands as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
my word.
It's the second time. They can't order properly, is the thing we're learning.
Did they just fall asleep on the keyboard? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, but I suppose if you are in that area, you're ordering too much of anything, don't make it fruit and veg. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be too harsh for the genetic makeup of people in that area, but not known for doing particularly well with eating vegetables. But the problem is, of course, perishable, aren't they? Your Easter eggs will last.
Yep.
Probably, there's a bit of a time cap on the Easter thing, but you can still eat them afterwards. So they are up against it. They've been giving them away hand over foot. It's cost them thousands. As it would do, you know what I mean? If it's 38,000 bananas.
Great publicity, though. Great publicity. What would you do if you had a surfeit of bananas?
Well, the suggestion on social media is to make banana bread, but I ain't going back there again. Not after lockdown.
Yeah.
That's the one thing we all had to do, isn't it? I still get the sweats when I think of that or watching Tiger King. I will never do it either one again.
Tiger King. Gosh, you've brought me back there, Tiger King. Whatever happened to Joe Exotic? Is he still in prison?
I think he eventually got out.
Right.
Yeah. And they did find the husband of Carol. Now I know.
Oh, really? What happened? Carol's husband emerged.
Yeah. So
he's alive, is he?
Yeah,
Gosh, because the whole thing was he was obsessed. Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, was obsessed with this woman who had sort of stolen his business and that she had killed her husband and fed him to the tigers. But he's alive and well, is he?
Yeah, and yes. I'll tell you what, though. What you need if the tigers are getting hungry, I know where they've got a lot of leftover bananas.
Yes, you could drop them in, airdrop them into the Orkney Islands, and they would have plenty of bananas. Do you know what? There's my favourite story of bananas. Are you familiar with Hangus the monkey?
No. Why?
So in Hartlepool, there was a mayoral competition, a mayoral election, and someone who was the I'm going to get this wrong, but he was the mascot of Hartlepool FC, a monkey called Hangus, like Angus, but Hangus. And the reason he was called Hangus is because that in Hartlepool, hundreds of years ago, I mean 300-400 years ago, whenever it was, a monkey was washed up from a shipwrecked, this is all apparently true, a shipwreck, and they thought it was a French person and hanged him. So they hung a monkey, and they thought it was a French spy, and they hung the monkey. Therefore, the mascot of Hartlepool FC was called Hangus the monkey. Now, this is where it gets complicated. So Hangus the monkey thought, these mayoral elections, load of old nonsense. I'm going to stand as a novelty candidate, and he had one manifesto pledge, which was that he would give bananas to every school child.
Yeah.
Hangus the monkey then won the election to be mayor of Hartlepool, and what did he backtrack on? He backtracked on his pledge to give bananas to every school child, because apparently there wasn't money in the budget for it.
All right, this is why I don't trust the French. I'm not sure why that means.
What's it got to do with the French? I don't trust football mascots.
This Frenchman turning up, he couldn't speak English, and he, looked a bit odd. So I guess that's why they thought he was French. And now he's coming over here trying to get political power. I think that's being colonised, isn't it? That's the definition we all learned.
The best bit was that he didn't actually govern as Hangus the monkey. He just took off his costume and was just like some bloke called Steve.
Right. Yeah. At least, there are a lot of people in politics that are just puppets, but at least he had the decency to admit it.
Very good point. I mean, your further jokes are available about political footballs as well. But for the moment, Steve, we'll leave it there. Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster. What do you make about these 38,000 bananas? Outrageous. I mean, and what are they up to in the Orkney? Oh, in the Orkney Islands. What's in the water there? That's what I want to know. Lots more to discuss. We're going to take some calls after the break. If you want to get your call in, give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. We'll also talk to Petri Hoskin about what's coming up on her programme between 10 and 1. Plenty still to come here on the Evening Exchange.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Anthony in Leeds has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Anthony, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to talk about?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
I want to talk about the coal mining industry.
Coal mining, okay, go ahead.
I want to talk about it. How come we shut them all down? I think we should have left some of them open.
Well, the demand just wasn't there, was it? And but we don't have any. I don't think we have any coal mines in the UK now. We import it all, don't we?
But what I'm saying is, we could have kept some of them open.
Yes.
What's going on now?
Yes.
That was a stupid decision by Margaret Thatcher, was that?
Although Tony Blair closed more coal mines than Margaret Thatcher ever did.
You know what? Yeah, that was Margaret Thatcher.
Well, she started it. I'm absolutely not taking that away. But more coal mines closed under Labour than the Tories. That is a fact.
What it was, we'll shut the Northerners up there. We'll shut all the mines down. The stupid decision was that. What's going on now?
So you think the mines could they be reopened? Do you think, or is that an option?
No. What I'm saying is, we could have kept some of them open.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's round the corner, do you?
Very true.
And I'm saying is, whatever these fruitcakes say, it cannot stop climate change. It's Mother Nature who decide what happens to the climate, not us.
Well, do you not believe that man-made climate change is a thing, Anthony?
No, it's just one of them things. It comes around in circles and.
But do you not think that what we're doing to the climate has some effect?
Nah.
You don't think that's true? I mean, science would say that you're wrong.
1709, hundreds of thousands of people died in Europe. In 1707, 1709, it was a year without no sun, caused by a volcano.
Okay, all right.
The only difference, what we do, it cannot stop Mother Nature. Once they get rid of us, it will do. Simple as that.
Okay, well, Anthony, I disagree with you on man-made climate change. I do think it is a thing. I do think it's having an effect. I think the effect is probably exaggerated, and I do think that we do need to be sceptical and think about it, and not just think about it as consensus, because that's something that is always dangerous. But Anthony, thanks for your call. Really appreciate that. Just a reminder that we are giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000 completely tax-free here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, splash it, save it. It's entirely up to you. Here's how you could be in with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
All the details there. Just a couple of minutes before we have to speak to Petri Hoskin. We'll find out what's happening on her show. Georgina's in London. Georgina, you have the final word this evening. What would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to say that your evening exchange is brilliant. I've loved every minute of it.
Oh, thank you.
Also, your little saying, you can disagree without being disagreeable.
Absolutely true.
I was listening to Sebastian Selleck this evening, and he was going on again about the migrants coming over and how we wouldn't forgive ourselves because they're coming from war-torn countries. Well, they're coming over from France, and that's over the channel. And the last time I heard, it wasn't a war-torn country. I think Sebastian needs to sit down with the mother of the young girl who was stabbed in the neck with a screwdriver because she didn't give a migrant biscuits. I think Sebastian should sit down and talk to the parents of the children who've been raped or followed home by illegal migrants. And I think he really needs to watch your show a little more often and see what's really going on in this country.
And the key point, everything you say is true, Georgina, and the key point, I think, in all of this is that, and he accepted this point, the would-be migrants, the asylum seekers, they don't have to come over. No one is holding a gun to their head saying you must come to the United Kingdom. He says they're fleeing war-torn countries. Well, yes, but they're not. France is not a war-torn country, as you correctly say, Georgina.
Absolutely, and they are fighting age, sexually active males that are coming over here. Every woman and child in this country now is at risk. We're not safe anymore, Peter, and we need to do something about it. Like I say, you know, if they're coming over from a war-torn country and they come to France, when they get to France, they're safe. There's no need for them to come over here. We don't want any more of them in our country, and that's basically, my darling, is all I wanted to say.
OK, well, Georgina, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. That's Georgina in London there with the final point of the evening. We'll talk to Petri in just a second, but thanks to Tad, who has messaged in to remind me that Wilson closed down more mines, and apparently I should ask John Redwood about that as well. So next time I interview Lord Redwood, I will certainly ask him about that. And we know that Labour closed many mines. Margaret Thatcher, of course, was the scourge of the miners. They often went on strike without a proper ballot. Arthur Scargill was the key person in all of that. That was the year I was born, actually, 1984, 41 years ago. But we know that the legacy of that is still there. The division that we often feel in our politics still very much there, and there's so many different issues that people have been in touch with us this evening about, whether it's about bins, whether it is about mines, whether it is about immigration, or interestingly as well about what Donald Trump has been saying. And just a bit of breaking news before we go to Petri Hoskin, and that is that Tiger Woods has pled not guilty to driving under the influence. Details of his arrest have been revealed. The golf star was charged after he attempted to overtake a truck at high speeds, ruled the Land Rover he was driving on Friday. His plea was confirmed in court in Martin County in Florida and came on the day that details of his arrest were released in the sheriff's report. He said he had hydrocodone pills. Is that how you pronounce it? Do you know? It's a type... Hydrocodone, maybe,
like that,
in his pocket, and bloodshot eyes at the scene of his car crash. He protests his innocence. We'll bring you more on that, of course, when we have it as things go on. Petri, good evening. Hello.
Good evening. Coming up, we're going to pick up on the Trump stuff. And I mean, I hate it when I can say I told you so, when I was right. But I called this 3 weeks ago. I said what he'll do is he'll say, right, I finished. Yeah.
It's always
and
on his terms.
Walk away, leaving it. But the hilarity is he's more reliant on the Strait of Hormuz in terms of petrol than we are. So we're going to be talking to, well, first of all, we're heading to Chatham House. As the Syrian president says, we're staying out of this, we're staying neutral. And just chatting about what would happen, actually, if Trump did walk away. Would that make Iran more likely to have proper conversations with the rest of us who tried to stay out of it? Could that be the answer to opening it? I don't think so. I think Iran have tasted the power now.